So, this is the Cutting Edge and RFM there with you next Wednesday. We want to yell up all the people in St. Martin, Tartola, and all these places, Trinidad, who vibes into it this weekend, yeah. Even though storm catch you down there. Storm catch you down there. After going through all of this problem, storm catch you down there. Storm catch you down there. After going through all of this problem with the airport area, so we go down there, so go back up with that storm, you understand? But that never stopped the show from going still, except for the last one, which was supposed to be a free show at the park, but it couldn't work out, the place flooded out. So why yell up Bushman? Why yell up all the ones them who turn out and all the ones them who connect with we in St. Martin? You know, it's a strange place. I don't know if you know this, but St. Martin is divided. It's a little country. I mean, little. When we say little, like little, I mean, the population of St. Martin could have hold a Stone Hill. You understand? I guess what now? It divided into two. The Dutch and the French control the country. One side is Dutch and one side is French. So you know everybody over there bilingual. I mean even more than bilingual too, because they have them own little dialect go on. But if you hear how it divide up, that one part name is French and one part is Dutch. It's like the two colonies the two colonizers, as I should say, the French and the Dutch. Them have a race. And the one who race more, longer and further, get the most of the land. So it's a race decide which part is Dutch and which part is French. Can you imagine that, man? You divide up a place where you come see people by a race. Anybody where run deso to deso is for them part that, and anybody where run deso to deso is for them part. So now them want Jamaican for a visa for go down there. I will get caught in the lalwa with this thing, with the airport I wait for visa, the visa that come. So why you look Bushman? Because Bushman go right to the Minister of Justice and say, watch a man, Mutabaruka have to come. You understand? So the Justice Minister does bam 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 sign a paper and letter does boom 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 right through American Airlines and send it there and say, watch a now, this brother here, visa or no visa, let me in. You understand? So we give thanks for that. Anyway, we see some things are going on now, we're terrible, and this program here tonight going to be a very different kind of program. I don't know, it's the first we're going to do this, but we're going to do it. Well, it's not the first we're going to do it still, but in the panel level here, we're going to do it. But we see some turn of events are going on in Libya there. Them will appear, apparently them get out Gaddafi, them are try find him now, them say £1.5 million dead or alive. £1.5 million dead or alive, these people is given for the capture or death of Gaddafi. Now, the problem with it, and the problem where I see going happen with these NATO forces, included France, especially France and England and America, is that them are letting some people to take over power because them hate Gaddafi so much that anybody else will do at this moment in time. And we have seen precedent set where America is always backing the wrong people eventually. I mean, history show that everywhere America go, forget out one and put in the next one. Right down the line, the next one turn against them. So we see from the beginning a whole heap of foreign soldiers were used to fight in Afghanistan, join up with the rebels them, will now take over the country. Now Tripoli is the last place I'm supposed to take over, and now them inside so. And the Western world is so feeling so good that them get out Gaddafi. You know what I'm saying? when push come to shove, who going to take the blame? Well, we're going to see what going to happen now that them get out Gaddafi. They are scared that them don't want to keep him alive. So it's either he must leave the country or get killed. Because him know say if him devout, him going to do certain things. Him still have him power. Even though them freeze him money. But it's 40 of the years him dead, so him know what to do and what not to do. So we're going to see what happen. We don't see the news since we leave my yard to find out what is the latest news. If them actually find him or if them kill him or whatsoever. But that is something left to be seen. We say America is going on like them don't have nothing to do with nothing. Them feel very easy, you know. We see America go like them don't have nothing to do with nothing in this Libyan thing, you know. But it pose lie that them don't take a step against Syria. And the Syrian government, there's more people dying, more protesters dying in Syria than in Libya. And when we see is that at the first hint of an uprising in Libya, America jump in there and say, yes, they have to get him out. Well, we understand that still because Gaddafi is a thorn in them side from years, you know, and he's a man where him not care. Him want totally eradicate the connection with the Western world. You know, him did promise to pump billions of dollars in African countries in order to make them not depend on Western countries like America and England. You know, he wanted to break down the barriers that was maintained by former colonial masters where them divide up countries in Africa. And him called for the dismantling of barriers in Africa. And he was putting the money where mouth is by offering to pump billions, not millions, billions of dollars in African states so as not to make them dependent on Western capitalist societies. Well, you know, say, all the oil they know, I tell you, why everywhere them people they attack, it have to oil there. You know, it's like, oil is always the place. The place where them always attack, oil is always there, you know. We are saying, Venezuela, watch on yourself, you know. Venezuela, watch on yourself. Chevaz, watch on yourself, you know, because them people is oil bent. Anyway, I was given a book. Well, it's really, it come like a comic, really, but it's not a comic in the true sense, because apparently this little book was written for even dumb people like me who don't have no historical reference point can understand it. Now, we want to big up Soji, my favorite engineer. Soji have a favorite engineer, trust me. Soji, we want big up, you know. Yes. Sometimes I'm gonna listen to the program, you know, and because I know say interested in certain things, you know, him depend on him trips them and him see something and him just say, well, I'm out to see this, you know. So the brethren go so bam and give me a book, yeah. And say, Muta, it's when you read a book, yeah, trust me. So you know, we read the book, you know, Soji, and you what me go do tonight, you know. Me not go selfish with the book, you know. Me go read the book to the listeners. Yes. The whole light, well, openly, that I can read the whole light. But it's, as we say, the book set up like a comic. It's set up like a comic, but it's a very interesting book. For those of you who want to know the name of the book and who want to go scout out the book for yourself, we want to tell you the book name, Addicted to War. Addicted to War. Why the United States can't kick militarism. Why the United States cannot kick militarism. And this one that I have is an updated version because it includes the war in Iraq. And on the front, it says over 300,000 in print worldwide. And it has been translated in many languages. And it has been endorsed by a lot of ex-soldiers. A lot of ex-soldiers endorse this book, Addicted to War. Now, what we're going to do tonight, we're going to read the book. Because we think it have a lot of historical facts in it, reference points, and just the idea that is some American involved in this writing of this book is very interesting. You know, and especially what is going on right now with the invasion of Libya. And there's so much things in this thing here that it's like a schoolroom. It's a schoolroom to United States militarism. It's a schoolroom. This little book here it shows you in details, in a very simple way, what America historically is in terms of warmongering. So we want to read the book, but we're not going to read the book yet. So we want you to gear up feet, because trust me, it's a schoolroom in itself, and you're not going to hear this thing in your classroom, whether up at the university or in your high school. So for those of you who know, say, you have foreign, what you call foreign things I study, and who I study American history in relationship to war and the military. This program is the right program to listen to, to get an in-depth view and idea about how America spend most of the money in just facilitating weapons, and more weapons. It's a very serious thing, and I really want to call the name of the book again. It named Addicted to War. Why the U.S. can't kick militarism. Why? And it's as I said before, it's a very simple book. I think about something else. Anyway, it's a very simple book. Yeah, even the dumb and ignorant can understand it. And as we say, we did a plan to read it little, but we can't read nothing little. We're going to read the whole light. Yes. It come out of Oakland, California. Well, the press will press it come out of Oakland, California. And as we say, it is now a very popular book. And I am thanking Soji again for giving me this book. And Soji didn't know where he must say, he said, boy, Muta, it's where you read this book. Yes. So it's true, sell fish, now sell meat, now sell no kind of animal. We are going to share this book here with the people them tonight. Because we feel, this is what radio is all about. This is really what radio is all about. Sharing information. And sometimes, if people don't travel, and sometimes you don't have internet, you don't have access to certain information. You understand? You don't really have access to certain information. So this is all about accessing information and presenting the information. And whatever you want to do with the information, that is your business. So this is the Cutting Edge. And IRFM, we're coming through. Cutting Edge. Yeah, Bridget. Yeah.
Yes, Muta.
Oh, you're the man?
Rastafari, you thanks,
you're the man that sings them nights in a Rasta Impress.
Why, it's like, then I you carry a count nowadays, and I say Rastafari, sometimes I wonder what I say, what I deal with.
But I know what the youth them, I miss some big dreadlocks man with the locks guard, I got the bottom of him to right, with some serious, what them call it, battery rider, and bun up here and all the bling you can think of, well arms up. Some don't know where I go on. Things are tight change.
For sure.
Yeah, man. So, alright. So, give thanks. So, we are work with now the Carl Garden vibes,
Yes. Well, I can bring that up to date what has been happening, right? I recall during April we had the Carl Garden function and the public defender Mr. Witter was there. Well, since that, somewhere in June, I man took Dr. Enid and Bongo Isaac to the public defender's office. And the investigation process started. Then now, last week, Monday, 5 investigators from the office came to pick 4. And what I did was to take all of the brethren and sisters who were victims and even individuals who were not victims but who witnessed the atrocities. They gave statement to the investigators. So the process from there now is that these statements will be analyzed by a legal team from the public defender's office, then submitted to the government and then to the parliament. If the parliament fail to respond in the way that I as Rastafari, Virgin and Sistine and the public defender see as being in accordance with what I would have liked, then it goes to the international forum, the Inter-American Human Rights Council, or bring it to the United Nations level at the ICC, which is the International Criminal Court. Now, about 26 Virgin and Sistine in all gave evidence. At the moment, I are aware of the fact that not everyone who experienced those atrocities live in Western Jamaica. So I appealing to anyone Virgin and Sistine outside of Western Jamaica or outside of Jamaica who experience or witness these atrocities to just get in touch with I as being chairperson for the Rastafari Coral Garden Committee at 4049776, Ras Flacco as secretary at 4764668, or the public defender's office. So that's why
you talk about ones who did involved with it but never get testimony.
Right.
Testify, yeah.
Right.
So all the brethren them in the bush, them who never come out of the bush and who did involve in it, I know so them are listen. You get a phone number.
Yeah.
Give me the phone number again, brethren.
My number is 404-9776. And Flacco, the secretary number is 476-4668. And the public defender's office, well, I don't recall the direct number, but you know, one going to the directory can find the public defender's office and can just call directly to the public defender's office.
Yeah, that would have better.
But Muta, I give thanks for, right? And I really want to give thanks to the public defender, Mr. Earl Witter, and the office, and those 5 investigators who came to Western Jamaica, who let themselves comfortable at Pick 4 during the 3 days, with all the rain and, you know what I mean? Because not everybody really can make themselves comfortable in a certain environment.
Yeah.
So I want to give thanks for you know, to what took place. And I know it is not something that them say will be accomplished overnight.
Yeah.
In the public defender's word, this is the first step in a 1,000-mile journey, you know?
Yeah.
But at least after 48 years, and I give thanks that
some move
a process of investigation has started where I hope and look forward to that it will bring some form of justice.
Yes.
To
closure,
those.
some form of closure to those who did. I mean, some form of closure to the ones who was really
who were victims of
it. Yeah. All right,
so we give thanks to that, and at the same time we're calling on the Rastafari community, because there is a motor to go on Rasta, you know. Sometimes you really wonder. And even other people out there looking in at the movement will wonder where this movement going, because you know, it's not like when I youth and just become involved in this movement as teenagers and And I did serious with Rastafari and still serious. We say, well, for the man them turn drunkard now. You understand? Well, for the man them with long locks turn drunkard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Well, for them just like there, I said the type of woman them when I'm deal with a type of different woman. So, I who take this thing serious, know what the movement is all about, have to just come together, tighten up ourselves in a unity, and make sure say, the struggle remain as meaningful as when I become involved in it.
Yeah, man. Give thanks, brethren.
And again, give thanks for the opportunity that I man could have really utter them sounds, and hoping that the individuals
we come
outside of Western Jamaica, outside of Jamaica, because we know enough of our brethren and sisters migrate to different parts of the world, especially England and America, you know. So we hope that anyone listening, anyone hearing who were not victims, but who know individuals who were victims and are victims, to just get in touch with I.
Get the number again, 404-9776. That is your number. And flanco number is 476-4668.
Right.
Any rats out there, whether them in the bush, down in the Kingston, they are foreign, and them did have some experience in the Carroll Garden incident, get in contact with them number there, and are the public defender.
Public defender, no.
Yeah, because we are moved towards it relentlessly. That next year when we have a next anniversary, we can say something concrete to the people.
Exactly.
Then. Give thanks, brethren.
Rastafari.
Yes, yes. Yeah, man, a serious thing. So, yeah, that is being moved on. Move on. I want to play something. I want to play something like the middle of this thing where we're going to do with this now. You know the Ku Klux Klan. The Ku Klux Klan, them people that are using white supremacists all the way. The American system still no let go after them. Just 2 weeks ago, some youth run down a 49-year-old man and kill him. And when them well, it's weird because them just left them yard and decides, and this thing they pan CNN, you know. This is not like a little underground story, you know, me attack, you know. It's a real thing I go on just the other day. Some youth left them yard and say, boy, them a go out, they go kill a black man. Anyway, them end up in this car park, and them see this black brother, and them start to beat him. Well, it's 2 car load of them, and when them done beat him, and them lay down on it, one of the car them drive off with some of the youth them, gone to one fast food restaurant go eat. When the man get up, the next car with the next brother, which is him them all now, and charge him. When they go back to the car and ball out, white power, and then when the black man get up and I walk to go back to the car park, the brother and me this upon the television, you know, because them have cameras. Me don't know why people do these things nowadays, and them don't know say camera there they are watch them and I pick up them. The camera pick up everything we go on. Them show it straight forward by the television. When the man get up, the youth drive the car over the man and kill him, and then drive go to the restaurant with him friend them and say him just kill a nigga. Them catch him off of the camera, based up off of the camera, them catch him and arrest him. A big thing in America, maybe I don't know if it didn't have the paper and so, but it did on CNN. The youth drive the car over the brother, struggle. He must struggle to get up, you know. So, you know, say white supremacy is still a big thing in America. Now, I want to play this thing here. This is funny, but serious. It's very funny, but it's very serious. I want to listen to this thing here. I crack up when I hear it, but then it's all a part of the seriousness that this is a Ku Klux Klan man being what them call it now, interviewed about this black man. Right? So, listen to this.
In 79, I think you would have been about 22, you went to a radio debate to the Reverend Wade Watts, who was the state leader of the National Association for the Advancement of Coloured People, who'd worked with Martin Luther King. Yes. And when you got to this debate, he held out his hand for you to shake.
Yes, he did.
Did you hesitate?
He caught me off guard. See, I'm expecting this black militant to come in with a great big afro this big and an African dashiki on with bones hanging around it and a button on that says, I hate honkies and death to crackers, you know, all that stuff. And I figured he'd have on
You seriously thought
Yeah, that's what I thought. And I thought he'd come in there carrying a boom box blaring out the theme from Shaft. I figured he'd flash the switchblade at me and go, black is beautiful, honky. I'm going to kill all you white devils, you know. That's what I thought I was going to see. So when the door opened up and in came Reverend Wade Watts, and he's wearing a suit and a tie, and he's carrying a Bible, and he walks up and he puts his hand out to me. He goes, hello there, Mr. Clare. I'm Reverend Wade Watts. I just want to tell you I love you and Jesus loves you. And I mean, I'm shocked, you know. And then he puts his hand out, and I'm shaking his hand without thinking, because this wasn't what I was expecting. Then I realized I just broke a Klan rule, and I jerked my hand back, you know. And I started looking at my hand, which he saw that, and that was met as an insult. The Klan rule book says the physical touch of a non-white is pollution. And I thought, I just shook hands with a black person, and he sees me looking at my hand. He goes, don't worry, Johnny, it don't come off. And you know, I start calling him names. I go, you no good, sorry, bleep, 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 you mother this, you, you that. And he looked at me and he goes, God bless you, Johnny. He says, you can't do enough to me to make me hate you. I'm going to love you, and I'm going to pray for you whether you like it or not. And I didn't know how to deal with that. I had never had that happen to me before.
A few years later, you burnt down his church, didn't you?
Set fire to his church. See, what happened was we started off going by his house, calling him names. We got no response. Threw trash all over his lawn. Got no response. We showed up with our sheets and hoods and stood out there in his yard. Said, get on out here, boy. We got something for you. And he comes outside and he goes, boys, Halloween's 4 more months away. I got no trick-or-treat in here for you. Come back in October. And he goes back in the house.
That's a brave man.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't know how to deal with this. And so the Klan goes, you got any more bright ideas? I said, I don't know. I said, I'll tell you what we'll do. So we burned across the street from his house. He came outside and asked us if we needed hot dogs and marshmallows for our barbecue, you know. So finally, I said, I'm tired of messing with him, and we set fire to his church. And they put the fire out before the church was destroyed. And I remember I called him up, disguised my voice, and I said, hey, boy, you better be afraid. We're coming to get you, boy. You don't know who we are, but we know who you are. And he goes, hello, Johnny. He goes, a man like you takes the time to call me. I'm so honored. And all that stuff. He goes, let me do something to you. He goes, dear Lord, please forgive Johnny for being so stupid. He doesn't mean to be so ornery. He's a good boy trying to get out somewhere there. And I hung up the phone on him. I said, how dare him. And so the funniest thing that happened with him, though, is I didn't know what to do. And I was at my ropes in. And one day we was watching him, and he went into a restaurant. So we got a bunch of us together, and about 30 of us went in there and surrounded him. And he had this chicken there on the table at the restaurant. And I walked up and I said, hey, boy, this restaurant's for white people only. We don't want you here. I said, so I'm going to make you a promise. I said, I promise you we're going to do the same thing to you that you do to that chicken. So you think real hard before you touch that chicken. So he looked at me and looked at the Klan. Then he picked up the chicken and he kissed it. And when he kissed the chicken, the whole restaurant acted just like y'all did. They all start laughing, you know, and everything. And I looked up, and even the Klan was laughing. You got to admit, that was funny. I said, every one of you outside. I'm outside, and they're doubled over laughing. And I'm going, you guys are going to get suspended and lose your robe for 2 weeks. I said, I'm getting tired of this. And I'm hollering at them and yelling, and they're laughing. I heard a horn honking, and Reverend Watts is driving off going, bye, Johnny, you know, and stuff. And that's how he chose. That's how one old black, we never bothered him again. And that's how one old black man defeated the entire Ku Klux Klan, because he used this instead of bronze.
And he used this too, a very brave man.
Heart.
Yes, this is the Culture Edge. We have a link here from Birmingham. Yes, sir.
Good night. Greetings, Jamaica. Greetings, Motor.
How are you, man?
I'm fine, thank you.
I see the fire quench little in England.
Well, it quenched practically, but not theoretically. Yeah. But let me just, as a promise, to just, you know, inform you of a few things, you know. You know, Sunday we have Saturday is the Marcus Garvey Day celebration.
Yeah.
And that celebration, it carries some unfortunate, you know, which we didn't expect.
What happened?
Some unscrupulous person, they sent text messages around claiming the event as postponed. Yeah, somebody sending text message around that it postponed. I don't understand why people, and I think, and it is someone who has, you know, people's telephone number, you know. So as one would say, it's not a white person. White person don't have these people's number, you know.
Well, yeah, but what about that people fight against Marcus Garvey still, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, but what about people who don't want to see that really that unification there and the name Marcus Garvey, you know, so not a surprise, you know.
Right. Well, the day went well. You know, the number was a bit low, but you know, we have main speaker, two brilliant woman, Sister Asha Baptiste and Esther Stanford. You know, they carry out the session well, and of course there were some few other acts. You know, with a closing reading from Marcus Garvey's opinion and philosophy.
Which day that go on? Which day?
It was Saturday.
Oh, well, we take part in a Marcus Garvey function in a St. Martin. We went to St. Martin and take part in a Marcus Garvey function too. So it was going on, you know. So you can say it's a good thing because different places in the world that this Marcus Garvey these functions that take place, you know.
Yes. Okay. Let me take it to another piece of item that happened on Monday now. It's August 22nd. I don't know if you know about it. It's the International Slavery Remembrance Day.
Yeah.
And that took place in Liverpool. It took the shape of a march from the Liverpool city centre and at the end at the Liverpool Old Dock where the ship, you know, departed to Africa back in them days, you know.
Yeah.
I can tell you, some of the people that were on the march were Dr. Karenga, you know.
Okay, the man who give it the Kwanzaa.
Yeah, and the creator of the Kwanzaa as well.
Yeah, that me say Kwanzaa, right. The man who give it the Kwanzaa.
Yeah. So that was good, you know. I've got some pictures of it. You know, when my website is up, I'm going to start to post these things on the website so people can, you know, have a look at it.
Yeah.
And you know, enjoy themselves. No. Sunday as well. We have Sunday. Yes, Sunday gone, right? So different things that, you know, over the past days. There was a meeting held at one of the large New Testament church in a community they call it Ladywood. And you know, it was organized to get answers to what caused the riot. And these were black people, you know. In the end, the many hundreds patrons deliver some frightening words, you know, like, you know, as white man calls it, and, you know, and all these kinds of sort of thing, you know, to the panel. And of course, let me just say, Bishop Webley, he was one of the persons on the panel, and he's spoken out to the Christians saying, it's not all about Jesus save, but you must put your shoulder to the wheel and challenge the system, what we have. So, I mean, I didn't expect a pastor, a bishop to say that to the Christians. Right. And I don't know if you know about a young lady named Beverly Bogle. She's the great grandniece of Paul Bogle. Well, what she's trying to do, she's trying to preserve the quadrille dance. And here in the UK, she formed what they call the Januka. And the Januka means Jamaican nurses in the UK and associate. What she do is begin with dancing, quadrille dancing at local venues, and to also to encourage others to join up. So that is Beverly Bogle. A piece of information, you know. She invokes
Mary C. Cole in the whole process as a nurse.
Okay.
No, may I ask you if she mentioned Mary C. Cole in the whole process as a nurse, a Jamaican nurse, or did they in England?
No, she hasn't.
You know, Mary C. Cole is a big thing in England.
Oh yes.
Yeah, she's like Nightingale. You know, she's well received and well adored in England because of her work, and she's a Jamaican, Mary C. Cole.
Right. Right. Okay. I mean, it would be nice. I mean, there are so many other dance we could preserve. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, the quadrille. I used to remember when my parents used to dance it when I was small. You know.
We don't get gold medal feet, man, in a festival when I go to school, man. We get gold medal feet, man.
So he's an all-rounder, man.
Yeah, then a slave try dance like white people, man. That's all it is. That slave try dance like white people.
Okay.
The quadrille, you have the camp style. You have the camp style, you know, where you take your girl and swing her around, and you bring her around and come back round, and all this talk and go round and come back round. And We dress up in some nice bow tie and all these things.
Because I understand the quadrille came over from, I think, France, something like that.
No, it's Europe it come from, but when I say it's some slaves that try dance like white people.
Yes, true.
And them have it in a festival every year. When I did a go school, we get a gold medal. My team get a gold medal feed in a festival. Yeah, that's that. Yes. They put with that suit with a white shirt and a red. You know, like them servant. And then the bow tie. Yes. And then we have to put the hand behind we and put the hand forward and we go right round and we come back round and all sorts of things. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. I'm just, getting closer to the end. I'm just going to tell you the people about this Sunday in London. This marks one of the biggest outdoor events. And it's what is the Notting Hill Carnival.
Yes, yes.
Yes. And the government has allocated 20,000 police to appoint to police the event.
Most.
Right. They said 10,000 will be working on the inside and 10,000 on the outside. I mean, that double Jamaica police force, man.
No, they're not England a big man. Where I say, man, England have more criminal than Jamaica. Even though they go like you don't have criminal over there, they have big criminal place that you know. England commit the most atrocities in the world against indigenous people.
The most, right?
Yeah, them commit the most atrocities against indigenous people all over the world.
Right.
Yes, so, you know.
Yes.
And them, say, after that, if you go have nothing on Carnival now with how much black people are up and down all over the place, it's a serious problem that for them. So they must have to keep on intact.
Right, because what the commissioner stated is that no one should be, grouping up in any one area outside, The police need to keep them, keep them going, nobody should be grouping up, and because that could stem off to some kind of trouble if people want to organize. But, so on that date, we have the most popular sound system because his name is Rampage. They pull out of the street party. Yeah. The organizer pull them out, fear of, rowdy atmosphere and violence. Apparently, they carry violence with them.
So I'm just Saxon. Saxon not about again? Saxon don't beat them not about again?
Yeah, sometimes I heard them on the radio, That's a few dates.
And Josh Shaka and all them big set there.
Oh, yeah. They're going to play this weekend.
Josh Shaka?
Yes.
Yeah, man. Great sound system, that.
I'm just going to finally tell you that this Sunday, most people might want to know, most people used to be in Birmingham. This Sunday, the 28th, is the Malcolm Marshall Memorial. It's an international cricket competition that happens every year. And there are, different cricketers from, all over the Caribbean, who attend. And I'm not really sort of a cricket fan, but it's always been a pack event. Just like, close to the carnival. Yeah. I'm going to finally say this. They said Jamaica people can be lucky. I don't know if this is allowed, but I don't know if one wants to send me to my Facebook. Just go to Irving Prince to my Facebook page and put 6 numbers. And I won't be able to buy everybody, but if they put 6 numbers, then I can buy the lottery here because it's worth a lot here if you exchange it back into Jamaican dollar. And I don't know, maybe somebody might give me 6 lucky number. So again, just type in HERVIN PRINCE to my Facebook page, and you can see me in the British Museum. That's a picture I have there. And just
in the British Museum?
I mean the picture and the Facebook.
But think you have some. But think them dig you up somewhere archaeologically.
No, man. It would be nice, So as I said, try to remember. Irving Prince.
Yes.
Just tap me a number, and if anything win, trust me.
Like how much money is up there? How much money? Because we have a lot of children over about $300 million now. How much it got up over there, sir?
I think the last time I've seen it gone up to about 19 million. 19
million pound.
19. Yeah, that would be like
19 multiplied by 130. No gas so.
That is a lot, man.
So how much you give out of that? How much if somebody said it go give you how much you give out of it?
30% for me, 30 for you, and 30 for the person.
30 for me?
Yeah.
Oh, like what me publicize it?
Yes.
All right, sir.
That's a fear.
Watch out, man. If we get all 10%, be all right, said we. So we're there.
All right.
30% for that. 30% for that. The way you do that at 10%.
No, we're gonna split it in 3 parts.
Yeah, but the 10% not left after you get 30 for me, 30 for them, and 30 for you. 10%
we're gonna
left.
split that 10 again in 3 parts.
Oh, but you know, give me the next 10. That's all.
Well, I mean, you really deserve it, you know, for holding the fort for the cottonage for so many years, you know.
Yeah,
so
next year at 20 years, but there, so you can't believe that. We can't believe it. Every time we go to my bed, we have nightmare about it.
Right. I tell you should play some tape, you know, of the first
long
few years
time.
of
Well, all of that is making all next year. All next year, pure that we're going to do. Pure all time tape. Anyway, give thanks, Bridget.
Yes, man.
Give thanks, yes. That was a connection from Bourbon of this. So him say, if we want to send him some numbers, you know, and if he win a 19 million Bourbon of this, so him say, if we want to send him some numbers, you know, and if he win a 19 million pound, so multiply 19 million by 100 and how much the going rate now, 130. Him say, ma give me 30%. You understand? And him give you 30%, and him take 30%, and then split up the other 10% again. Trust me, man. All right, sir. So now, that little thing that we play a while ago with the Ku Klux Klan, it's funny. Trust me, it's really funny. All right, where we there now? At this with the day, you know? Yeah, this is the Coaching Edge on RFM. We want to tell you, say, the group here, One Drop Music. The youth them, we did emphasize the vibes already with them youth here, you know, because as some youth we have come up where it's not touched by the hype and thing we are going in the music. Them just a carve them own consciousness. And this is Raging Fire. A group we have carved them own thing, and we did done play Janine already as we #1 sister now. Trust me. Can't stop talking about I don't know why. She just nice when it come on to the music vibe. You understand? Yeah, man. She just nice. So we're gonna keep playing them kind of vibes there, because trust me, the music have to take forward the turn where it have, why Jamaica get big and why people love Jamaican music. So was because of these vibes where we just let go with the bridging them a while ago, and it need something to perk it up forward. You understand? Because it now work. People get turned off our fight right now, directly turned off. Some sisters are trying to bring it back though. Them have a series, I think, name well, it's reggae party still, a cultural reggae party, and it going to have, the first one take place in Wikiwaki the other day. Well, this one is going to be at the Country Farmhouse. Those of you who don't know what Country Farmhouse, they are 3 Dinner Road. That is which part of the big tofu them and things make. Original Rastaman place, you understand? Well, the party this Saturday, August the 27th, will be at Country Farmhouse, the Conscious Reggae Party. Yes, this Saturday, Country Farmhouse, Vineyard Town. And we're going to have Warrior King, Kali P, the opera singer Marie, Clear, Cherry Natural, Chronic, Ketis, Dub Core, and Uprising Roots Band. Yes. And then you have revolutionary speaker Steve Golden from the UNIA. And selectors Mutabaruka and Gabriel Selassie. I want the people remember, say Gabriel Selassie used to come on per RFM in the night, just like right now. Yes, Gabriel Selassie. So Gabriel Selassie and Mutabaruka will be spinning some music, and this is this Saturday at Country Farmhouse. We're going to be there. Cutting Edge, RFM. This is the Cutting Edge on RFM. We're there with you. We say the thieving company I say it all the while. We see the TV company I tried to do something to rectify them whole billing system. Anybody don't know what we are talking about from now? Should I know say a Jamaica public service we are talking about from last year? We are telling say are the biggest thief them in Jamaica. In them worse than the gunman them. Jamaica public service worse than the gunman them, you know, because guess what now? The gunman not in your yard every day. You understand? GPS in your yard every day and them are rob you blind. And no people are get sick. After last year we are telling people them. Anyway, we see them are try to rectify them billing system through the OUR they know. So we don't know what's going to happen when them come with them findings. Them say it will take 6 weeks for them investigate to see if this billing system did I rob the people them or not. But you know, me not understand this thing continuously, you know. It's like a procedure where burn me and procedure where I top my head, you know. The people them a ball say something wrong. Like a whole heap of things wrong. People are get billed for $400,000 for 1 month and them not in a factory. You understand? Me get all a bill and me know say the bill wrong. Cause me base it up off of 3 different bill. And me know say nothing can go so in life. You understand? Nothing can go so in life. Anyway. So the people them a ball out, people them demonstrate and all them something they know. I know we hear say them a go investigate, audit and say this and this and this and that. But them a say no, them have some digital thing where it more precise than the old one them with them used to have. So them still insist say something wrong. It's like them a bill you for where the old meat and never bill you for. Them people are wicked, you know. Them did a bill you for Ivan, you know. Ivan licked down them posts. And for years after Ivan, Jamaican people appear Jamaica public service for something where Ivan do. Them not go pray to God or ask God for forgiveness, you know. Them bill we. Alright now. So them take out the Ivan thing now and them a rob way blind. And you have some people who sit down in them office, you know, where actually I defend the billing system and I show you say, well, you know, this I Mr. One Pan TV yesterday, you know, and them attack like say, boy, right. Do you attack, you know, it's like, wait, this is what them a complain for. We have a digital system, you know. This digital system can't wrong. So we say no. Most Jamaican people wrong. The machine right. So when a man get a bill for $4,000 this month, and then it jump to $10,000 the next month. It's like them a try to show the bill thing, the thing can't wrong. So them have this government agency now. We are going to investigate this thieving company and now we are rob the people them. And them also know a lawyer come out and I say it unconstitutional. The idea of them monopolizing the whole lighting thing unconstitutional, and we should have really sue them. Sue the way name there. Oh gosh, what them name again? Anyway, we should have sued them because there is a case against them. Now, me not understand where we are going, you know. Our country supposed to be. And a company get the go-ahead for thief way from the next thieving government. And this government, you know, continue with the thieving thing. So them not different from the next government. And the whole of them collaborate to rob Jamaican people. And them have big profits. You know, me can't understand how the company them and make so much profit. NCB, Scotiabank, up to the Gleaner. The Gleaner today, so they make how much billion dollar profit. GPS, I make profits, on top of profit. How so much profit I make in a Jamaica, and Jamaican people I get poorer and poorer. So it's what defend. Me understand. GPS say them make profit. And them a ball say you thief electricity. Then how them a thief so much people? Me I tell you say GPS worse than the gunman. The gunman wait till you come out of your yard most of the time and rob you. GPS in your yard 24/7 and rob you. And you can't know nothing about it. And the government sit down there and I thought they might investigate like said Jamaican people don't know what they must say. One of the women them in a parliament show a light bill. And so them take it serious now, because one of them in that parliament realized about this is a thieving thing I go on. Next week, we're going to bring somebody in the studio here where I deal with solar energy. Now we know that solar energy might sound like some little uptown, middle class, something. But right now, you see, we have to get rid of GPS, We have to get rid of GPS, Rasta. We have to get rid of GPS. Because people is having some serious sickness because of GPS. We have to get rid of GPS. Them should carry GPS to the Hague court in Europe and try them. Like how them say them are going to try Libyan Gaddafi now. GPS need to go to some big United Nations court and get charged for robbing Jamaican people blindly for how much years now. And like a thief in government where we did have the last time come and give them bigger way for thief way, rob way, where we can't get out of, which we can get out of. But this government now, I go like say, them not realize say the Jamaican people, we there, afraid them fear for ball out. I want woman me hear ball out in the parliament. Because when she look on her light bill, she realize it can't work that way there. My light bill can't work that way there. Thousands of Jamaican people light bill can't work that way there. And the biggest thing in Jamaica right now, you think of the gunman are the biggest thing in Jamaica right now? The worst enemy of the people them right now is not the gunman, it's Jamaica Public Service. Jamaica Public Service. That's some wicked setup. It's a company where, sure, may I tell you, man, it's a serious thing. Anyway, we're not going to get boiled up because our blood pressure, them want me get that too. Like some people know. You can't somebody when you open your light bill, you didn't pay $4,000 last month. And when you open your light bill, you say $10,000 at school, pick that for go to school this month. Pick that for go to school and book, not to mention the book them now $20,000. Well, it's what going in Jamaica the way you start. And the guys them sit down on television and make some big proclamation in the Rasta. Poor people pick their figure school now. Some of them pass exam. Poor people pick their pass enough exam now and I go big school now, Campion and Immaculate and all this school now. So the more you step up in life, is the more you know say your pocket have big and strong. Well, your pocket not get big and strong. Since you pick the pass exam, your pocket not big and strong. As a matter of fact, you look like your pocket have more hole now. But yet you have to go find thousands of dollars to go buy some book, you know, for just further your youth education. It's a serious situation to find yourself in. This is the Cutting Edge on IRFM. This is the Cutting Edge on IRFM. We're there with you. Cutting Edge. We want to heal up Ivan Goldson in Japan. Now, this sister here is very unique because it's the first Jamaican I know will make a translation, a Japanese translation in a Jamaican, a dictionary to translate Japanese in a Jamaican. Plus, now we see the sister open a restaurant named Jamrock Restaurant, and she want invite any artist will come up to Japan, Ajuko, in a Tokyo, to come to a restaurant and enjoy, because it's the only Jamaican restaurant there in a Ajuko, in a Tokyo. Jamrock Restaurant. Ivan, why you love Ivan, you know, trust me, man. Trust me, a long time she about, and we see say she really going to it. So, any artist, we will say, Kokoti did the other day, yes, we will say Luciana go Japan soon, so, Luciana, if you hear anybody hear it, the daughter invite you a restaurant, Jamrock Restaurant in Ajoko, Tokyo. Yes, just ask Ivan. Okay. So now, we want to read the book now. As we tell you, we have this book named Addicted to War, Why the US Can't Kick Militarism. And it is going to give you some history here. So as we say, we're going into the classroom now. So, while listen keenly, because this information is information where people actually pay for. And as we say, we give thanks to Soji for really give us the book, introduce us to the book, and we feel so we should share it with Jamaica. So, anything we hear we say after now is coming from the book. Okay? Ready? Here goes.
addicted to war. Why the U.S. can't kick militarism. Our story begins on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah, look at all the money the government took out of my paycheck.
Later that evening.
Mom, they want you to help at a big sale so my school can buy toilet paper.
First no books and now no toilet paper? Do they have anything at your school?
At the next school board meeting.
I'm sorry. The local tax base is declining and we get very little help from the federal government. There's just no money.
What do they do with all the taxes I pay?
A huge part of the money the IRS takes out of our paychecks goes to support the military. Military spending adds up to more than half of the federal government's annual discretionary spending.
No wonder there's no toilet paper.
The United States maintains the largest and most powerful military in history. U.S. warships dominate the oceans. Its missiles and bombers can strike targets on every continent, and hundreds of thousands of U.S. troops are stationed overseas. Every few years, the U.S. sends soldiers, warships, and warplanes to fight in distant countries. Many countries go to war, but the U.S. is unique in both the size and power of its military and its propensity to use it. The costs of being a military superpower and waging wars around the world are high. Because hundreds of billions of dollars are funneled to the Pentagon every year, the government skimps on providing for basic needs of people here at home.
Let's roll.
Cutbacks in social programs have caused far more devastation in this country than any foreign army ever has. But the costs of U.S. foreign wars are more than simply economic. They include the lives of the soldiers who never come home. Foreign wars also bring bloody retaliation against the U.S., such as the terrorist attacks that took the lives of thousands of people at the Pentagon and the World Trade Center.
Despite the high costs in money and lives, the government seems determined to keep going to war, putting us all in harm's way.
But why is the United States always getting into wars?
To answer that, you have to understand the history of this country.
2 centuries ago, the United States was a collection of 13 small colonies on the Atlantic coast of North America. Today, it dominates the globe in a way that even the most powerful of past empires could not have imagined.
The path to world power has not been peaceful.
I'll have to read up on this.
Yes. Chapter 1, Manifest Destiny. The American revolutionaries who rose up against King George in 1776 spoke eloquently about the right of every nation to determine its own destiny. Thomas Jefferson, from the Declaration of Independence, 1776, said, "When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bonds which have connected them with another and assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. Unfortunately, after they won the right to determine their own destiny, they thought they should determine everyone else's too. The leaders of the newly independent colonies believed that they were preordained to rule all of North America. This was so obvious to them that they called it manifest destiny. Quote, "We must march from ocean to ocean. It is the destiny of the white race." This is a representative named Giles from Maryland. The manifest destiny soon led to genocidal wars against the Native American people. The U.S. Army ruthlessly seized their land, driving them west and slaughtering those who resisted. During the century that followed the American Revolution, the Native American people were defeated one by one. Their lands were taken and they were confined to reservations. The number of dead has never been counted, but the tragedy did not end with the dead. The native people's way of life was devastated. And this is a quote from a Native American named Black Elk. I can still see the butchered women and children lying heaped and scattered all along the crooked conch as plain as when I saw them with eyes still young. And I can see that something else died there in the bloody mud and was buried in the blizzard. A people's dream died there. It was a beautiful dream. The nation's hope is broken and scattered. By 1848, the United States had seized nearly half of Mexico's territory. Now, a whole heap of you might not know this, but Mexico extended these states. I'm going to call out the states that was once Mexico before the Europeans, the white people, them thief it. 1848. These are the countries that was stolen, that was called Mexico one time. California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, parts of Colorado, parts of Wyoming. All of these territory was seized from Mexico in 1848. And that was half of Mexico's territory. In Congress, the war against Mexico was justified with speeches about the glory of expanding Anglo-Saxon democracy. But in truth, it was the southern slave owners' thirst for land and the lure of Western gold that inspired these speeches. With their domain now stretching from coast to coast, the Manifest Destiny crowd began to dream of an overseas empire. Economic factors drove these ambitions. Colonel Charles Denby, a railroad magnate and an ardent expansionist, argued, quote, "Our condition at home is forcing us to commercial expansion. Day by day, production is exceeding home consumption. We are after markets. The greatest markets is the world," unquote. Call for empire was echoing through the halls of Washington. I firmly believe, and this is an ex-senator, Orville Platt, I firmly believe that when any territory outside the present territorial limits of the United States becomes necessary for our defense or essential for our commercial development, we ought to lose no time in acquiring it. To become a world power, the United States built a world-class navy. A gung-ho Theodore Roosevelt was put in charge of it. And this is quoting Theodore Roosevelt, 1897. "I should welcome almost any war, for I think this country needs one." He didn't have long to wait. The next year, taking a fancy to several Spanish colonies, including Cuba and the Philippines, the U.S. declared war on Spain. Rebel armies were already fighting for independence in both countries, and Spain was on the verge of defeat. Washington declared that it was on the rebel side, and Spain quickly capitulated. But the U.S. soon made it clear that it had no intention of leaving. This is a quote from Senator Albert Beveridge. "The Philippines are ours forever, and just beyond the Philippines are China's eliminatable markets. The Pacific is our ocean." And for the senator, the Pacific was only the beginning. There's an next quote from him. "The power that rules the Pacific is the power that rules the world. That power is and will forever be the American Republic." Elaborate racist theories were invented to justify colonialism, and these theories were adopted enthusiastically in Washington. Quote from Albert Beveridge: "We are the ruling race of the world. We will not renounce our part in the mission of our race. Trustee under God of the civilization of the world, He has marked us as its chosen people. He has made us adept in government, that we may administer government among savage and senile peoples," unquote. But the Filipinos didn't share the views of Senator Beveridge and his buddies. They fought the new invaders as they had fought the Spanish. The U.S. subjugated the Philippines with brute force. U.S. soldiers were ordered to burn all and kill all, and they did. By the time the Filipinos were defeated, 600,000 died. U.S. and they show a picture here with the U.S. soldiers standing on the bones at the Filipinos. The Philippines, Puerto Rico, and Guam were made into U.S. colonies in 1898. Cuba was formally given its independence, but along with it, the Cubans were given the Platt Amendment, which stipulated that the U.S. Navy would operate a base in Cuba forever, that the U.S. Marines would intervene at will, and that Washington would determine Cuba's foreign and financial policies. No, don't say I never give you anything. This is Uncle Sam talking here. Okay. During the same period, the U.S. overthrew a wise Queen Laleokolani and transformed these unspoiled Pacific islands into a U.S. Navy base surrounded by Dole and Del Monte plantations in 1903. After Theodore Roosevelt became president, he sent gunboats to rescue Panama's separation from Colombia. The Colombian government had refused Roosevelt terms for building a canal. And then they say if they won't sell it, I trust I'll take it. Then Uncle Sam began sending his Marines everywhere. The Marines went to China, Russia, North Africa, Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. Between 1898 and 1934, the Marines invaded Cuba 4 times, Nicaragua 5 times, Honduras 7 times, the Dominican Republic 4 times, Haiti 2 times, Guatemala 1 time, Panama 2 times, Mexico 3 times, and Colombia 4 times. In many countries, the Marines stayed on as an occupying army. Sometimes for decades, when the Marines finally went home, they typically left the countries they had occupied in the hands of a friendly dictator, armed to the teeth to suppress his own people. Behind the Marines came legions of U.S. business executives, ready not only to sell their goods, but also to set up plantations, drill oil wells, and stake out mining claims. The Marines returned when called upon to enforce slave-like working conditions and put down strikes, protest, and rebellion. Companies like Standard Oil, United Fruit, Domino Sugar, Anaconda Copper, and President William Howard Taft in 1910 said, I accept responsibility for active intervention to secure for our capitalist opportunity for profitable investments. A reporter described what took place after U.S. troops landed in Haiti in 1915 to put down a peasant rebellion. American Marines opened fire with machine guns from airplanes on defenseless Haitian villages, killing men, women, and children in the open marketplaces for sport. 50,000 Haitians were killed. General Smedley Butler was one of the most celebrated leaders of these marine expeditions. After he retired, he reconsidered his career, describing it as follows. And this is the marine named Smedley Butler. I spent 33 years and 4 months in active military service. And during that period, I spent most of my time as a high-class muscle man for big business, for Wall Street and the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer, a gangster for capitalism. Thus I helped make Mexico and especially Tampico safe for American oil interests in 1914. I helped make Haiti and Cuba a decent place for the National City Bank boys to collect revenues in. I helped in the raping of half a dozen Central American republics for the benefit of Wall Street. I helped purify Nicaragua for the International Banking House of Brown Brothers in 1902-1912. I brought light to the Dominican Republic for American sugar interests in 1916. I helped make Honduras right for American fruit companies in 1903. In China in 1927, I helped see to it that Standard Oil went on its way unmolested. World War I was a horrific battle among the European colonial powers. Sorry, let me read it again. World War I was a horrific battle among the European colonial powers, over how to divide up the world. When President Woodrow Wilson decided to enter the fray, he told the American people that he was sending troops to Europe to, quote, make the world safe for democracy. But what Wilson was really after was what he considered to be the United States' fair share of the spoils. Wilson's ambassador to England said rather forthrightly that the U.S. would declare war on Germany because it was, quote, the only way of maintaining our present preeminent trade status. For this, 130,274 U.S. soldiers were sent to their death. Our boys were sent off to die with beautiful ideals painted in front of them. No one told them that dollars and cents were the real reason they were marching off to kill and die. World War I was supposed to be the war to end all wars. It wasn't. During World War II, millions of young Americans signed up to fight Germany fascism and Japanese imperialism. But the goals of the strategic planner in Washington were far less admirable. They had imperial ambitions of their own. In October 1940, as Germany and Japanese troops were marching in Europe and Asia, a group of prominent government officials, business executives, and bankers was convened by the U.S. State Department and the Council of Foreign Relations to discuss U.S. strategy. They were concerned with maintaining an Anglo-American sphere of influence that included the British Empire, the Far East, and the Western Hemisphere. They concluded that the country had to prepare for war and came up with, quote, an integrated policy to achieve military and economical supremacy for the United States. Of course, they didn't say this publicly. And this is what they didn't say publicly. And this is coming from the private memorandum between the Council on Foreign Relationship and the State Department, 1941. Quote, if war aims are stated, which seems to be concerned solely with Anglo-American imperialism, they will offer little to people in the rest of the world. The interests of the other people should be stressed. This would have a better propaganda effect. A horrendous war was concluded with horrendous event. 200,000 people were killed instantaneously when the U.S. dropped nuclear bombs, first on Hiroshima and then on Nagasaki. Tens of thousands more died later from radiation poisoning. And it is interesting to know that America is the only country that has ever used a H-bomb. And this is a quote from President Harry Truman, 1945. We pray that God might guide us to use the bomb in his ways and for his purpose. This is President Truman. I pray to God. He said, we pray that God might guide us to use the bomb in his ways and for his purposes. The defeat of Japan had really been assured before the bombs were dropped. Their main purpose was to demonstrate to the world the deadly power of America's new weapon of mass destruction. World War II left the U.S. in a position of political, economic, and military superiority. Quote, we must set the pace and assume the responsibility of the majority stockholder in this corporation known as the world. The U.S. eagerly assumed responsibility for determining the economic policies and selecting the management of what it considered to be the subsidiary companies that made up the corporation known as the world. But this didn't go over too well in many nations. What it considered to be the subsidiary companies that made up the corporation known as the world. But this didn't go over too well in many nations that considered themselves to be sovereign countries. This is the Cutting Edge on RFM. The time is 12 o'clock. We continue the reading from the book named Addicted to War, Why the U.S. Can't Kick Militarism. Chapter 2, The Cold War and the Exploits of the self-proclaimed world policeman. The United States, however, had to contend with the Soviet Union, which had also emerged from the Second World War as a world power. For the next 45 years, the world was caught up in a global turf battle between the two superpowers. The US was always much stronger than the Soviet adversary, but both countries maintained huge military forces to defend and expand their own sphere of influence. The contention between the two powers was called the Cold War because they never directly engaged each other in battle. But the Cold War was marked by plenty of violence in other countries. Typically, the two superpowers lined up on opposite sides of every conflict. For its part, the US moved to expand its own sphere of influence beyond the American and the Pacific to include much of the old British, French, and Japanese colonies or colonial empires in Asia and Africa. In doing so, it had to deal with local aspirations that did not always accord with American plans to put down insubordination, disorder, and disloyalty in its sphere. The new majority stockholder also appointed itself the world policeman. During the Cold War, Washington intervened militarily in foreign countries more than 200 times. During the Cold War, Washington intervened militarily in foreign countries more than 200 times. 1. Korea, 1950 to 1953. After World War II, the ambitious plans of the U.S. State Department for Asia and the Pacific were upset completely by revolutions and anti-colonial wars from China to Malaysia. A major confrontation developed in Korea. Washington decided to intervene directly to show that Western military technology could defeat any Asian army. U.S. warships, bombers, and artillery reduced much of Korea to rubble. Over 4,500,000 Koreans died. 3 out of 4 were civilians. 54,000 U.S. soldiers returned home in coffins. But the U.S. military, for all of its technology superiority, did not prevail. After 3 years of intense warfare, a ceasefire was negotiated. Korea is still divided, and some 40,000 U.S. troops remain in southern Korea to this day, waiting for another war. This is interesting. Between 1950 and 1953, which is 3 years, over 4,500,000 Koreans died. 3 out of 4 were civilians. 54,000 U.S. soldiers returned home in coffins. This is the Korean War. Dominican Republic, 1965. After U.S.-backed military coup, Dominicans rose up to demand the reinstatement of the overthrown presidents who they had elected in a popular vote. Washington, however, was determined to keep its men in power. No matter who the Dominicans voted for, 22,000 U.S. troops were sent to suppress the uprising. 3,000 people were gunned down in the streets of Santo Domingo. This is America for you, you know. It's not the Al-Qaeda we are talking about, no, you know. It's America. Okay. Vietnam, 1964 to 1973. For 10 years, the U.S. assaulted Vietnam with all the deadly force the Pentagon could muster, trying to preserve a corrupt South Vietnamese regime, which had been inherited from the French colonial empire. The U.S. may have used more firepower in Indochina, Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia than had been used by all sides in all previous wars in human history. The U.S. may have used more firepower in Indochina, which include Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, than had been used by all sides in all previous wars in human history. And then one of the quotes, one of them say, sometimes you have to destroy a country to save it. U.S. warplanes dropped 7 million tons of bombs on Vietnam. U.S. warplanes dropped 7 million tons of bombs on Vietnam. That's the equivalent of 1 350-pound bomb per person. 400,000 tons of napalm were rained down on the tiny country. Agent Orange and other toxic herbicides were used to destroy millions of acres of farmland and forests. Villages were burned to the ground and their residents massacred. Altogether, 2 million people died in the Indochina War, most of them civilians killed by U.S. bombs and bullets. Almost 60,000 U.S. soldiers were killed and 300,000 U.S. soldiers wounded. Despite the ferocity of the assault on Vietnam, the U.S. was ultimately defeated by a lightly armed but determined peasant army. Despite the ferocity of the assault on Vietnam, the U.S. was ultimately defeated by lightly armed but determined peasant army. Lebanon, 1982 to 1983. After the Israeli invasion of Lebanon, the U.S. Marines intervened directly in the Lebanese civil war, taking the side of Israel and the right-wing Phalange militia, which had just massacred 20,000 Palestinian civilians. 241 Marines paid for their intervention with their lives when their barracks were blown up by a truck bomb. Grenada, that is just near where we are now, 1983. About 110,000 people live in the tiny Caribbean island of Grenada. About the same number that live in Peoria, Illinois. But according to Ronald Reagan, Grenada represented a threat to the U.S. security. So he ordered the Pentagon to seize the island and install a new government, more to his liking. And one of the Secretary of State, George Shultz, in 1983 said, a lovely piece of real estate. This is America invade the little island, you know, with only 110,000 people. And a lot of us remember that invasion, that Jamaica, some Jamaicans get involved with it. Libya, 1986. Washington loved King Address, the Libyan monarch, who happily turned over his country's oil reserve to Standard Oil for next to nothing. It aids Colonel Gaddafi, who threw the king out. In 1986, Reagan ordered the U.S. warplanes to bomb the Libyan capital, Tripoli, claiming that Gaddafi was responsible for a bomb attack at a German disco that killed 2 U.S. soldiers. It's unlikely that very many of the hundreds of Libyans killed or injured in the U.S. bombing raid knew anything about the German bombing. So far, we've recounted wars that have involved U.S. troops, but there are many other wars in which Washington is involved behind the scenes. After World War II, Britain was compelled to dispose of its colonial empire in the Middle East. The British gave a big chunk of the land known as Palestine to European Jews displaced by the Holocaust. The problem was that there were already people living there. The result has been 5 decades of violence and war. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were driven from their homes in what became Israel. The center of the conflict has been the West Bank and Gaza, where Palestinians have lived for decades under Israeli occupation. The U.S. provides crucial political support and billions of dollars a year in aid to Israel, including the most advanced weaponry. More than 3 decades of occupation of the West Bank and Gaza have produced bitter anger, not only at Israel, but also at the United States as Palestinian teenagers continue to die in confrontations with the Israeli army. This anger only grows. The U.S. government stands behind its friends, including dictatorial regimes suppressing their own people. In the 1970s and 80s, popular insurgencies challenged corrupt dictatorship in Central America. The Pentagon and the U.S. armed and trained security forces and death squads that kill hundreds of thousands of people, mostly unarmed peasants in Nicaragua and El Salvador and Guatemala. Don't blame them. They were terrorists disguised as peasants. This is a quote from one of the soldiers, the headman them. Many of the military officers responsible for the worst atrocities in Central America were trained at the Pentagon School of the Americas in Georgia. The school trains officers from all over Latin America. This training, it's training manuals, and this is serious because we hear like America is going on like them is like Jesus for war. In other words, them don't do certain things. But listen to this. There's a school called the School of the Americas in Georgia. The school trains officers from all over Latin America. Its training manual recommends torture and summary execution. Its graduates have returned to establish military regimes and terrorize their own people. Today, bloody U.S.-backed counterinsurgency war continues in Colombia, Mexico, Peru, the Philippines, and other countries in Colombia. A corrupt U.S.-backed army fights alongside paramilitary forces that have slaughtered whole of villages and hundreds of opposition union leaders and politicians. The U.S. has been getting more deeply involved under the cover of the war on drugs, providing billions of dollars for arms used to continue the killing. The CIA and the Pentagon have also organized proxy armies to overthrow governments that are not well liked in Washington. In 1961, for instance, U.S. warships ferried a small army of mercenaries to Cuba, hoping to reverse the Cuban Revolution. They landed on the Bay of Pigs. It was the 5th U.S. invasion of Cuba, but this time the U.S. was defeated. In the 1970s and 80s, the CIA was particularly busy financing, training, and arming guerrilla armies around the world. For years, the U.S. backed Portugal's effort to hang on to the colonies in southern Africa, helping it stave out independent wars in Angola and Mozambique. In 1975, after a democratic revolution in Portugal, the Portuguese called it quits, but Washington didn't. Instead, it teamed up with the apartheid regime in South Africa to supply a mercenary army to fight the new government in independent Angola and in Mozambique. Top U.S. and South African politicians and ex-military officers sponsored a particularly brutal bunch of mercenaries who massacred tens of thousands of peasants. This was during the South African apartheid time. And then, of course, there are the Contras. After the Nicaraguan people overthrew the U.S.-backed dictatorship of the Somoza family in 1979, the CIA gathered together the remnants of Somoza's hated National Guard and sent them back to Nicaragua with all the weapons they could carry to loot, burn, and kill. And this was under Ronald Reagan, and in quote, "The Contras are the moral equivalent of our founding fathers." This is a quote from Ronald Reagan in 1985. Reagan said the Contras are the moral equivalent of our founding fathers. In 1979, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan to prop up a friendly regime. Soviet occupation made fierce popular resistance. The CIA stepped in to arm, finance, and train the Afghan Mujahideen's guerrillas, working closely with the Pakistan and Saudi governments, with generous support from Washington and its allies. The Mujahideen defeated the Soviets after a brutal decade-long war. Among the CIA's collaborators in this war was a Saudi named Osama bin Laden. Together with the CIA, bin Laden supplied the Afghan Mujahideen with money and guns to fight the Soviets. The Afghan war helped militarize and internationalize Islamic movements to rid the Muslim world of foreign domination. Ultimately, this movement didn't like the United States any more than the Soviets at the time. However, the U.S. bankers of bin Laden and the Mujahideen were not overly concerned about their wider goals. Okay. In the 1980s, Reagan stepped up the arms race, increasing military spending to unprecedented levels. The Soviets were a much smaller economic struggle to keep up. But they couldn't. Massive military spending put tremendous strain on Soviet society, contributing to its collapse. The U.S. won the arms race and the Cold War. As the Cold War came to an end, some people began talking about an era of world peace and a peace dividend. But behind closed doors at the White House and the Pentagon, the talk was quite different. They were busy planning a new era of wars. Chapter 3, the New World Order. Bush, the father, we are the only superpower, the New World Order. In 1989, as the Eastern Bloc began to crumble, top U.S. government strategists gathered to discuss the world situation. The Soviet Union, they happily agreed, was no longer able or inclined to counter U.S. military intervention abroad. It was time they decided to demonstrate U.S. military power to the world. The White House wanted some decisive victories. So they started to map out the places that they think they could really occupy. And this is a quote from the National Security Council Policy Review document in 1989. Quote, in cases where the U.S. confronts much weaker enemies, our challenge will be not simply to defeat them, but to defeat them decisively and rapidly. Panama, 1989. Panama was the first country selected to be much weaker enemy. Ever since U.S. warships brought Panama into existence, U.S. troops have intervened in the small country whenever Washington deemed it necessary. George H.W. Bush continued this tradition in 1989, sending in 25,000 troops, supposing to arrest a drug dealer. The drug charges were only a pretext. The real motive was assuring U.S. control over the Panama Canal and the extensive U.S. military bases in their country. A new Panamanian president was sworn in at a U.S. air base moments before the invasion, hardly Mr. Clean. The man the U.S. State Department picked for the job, Guillermo Endara, ran a bank that is notorious for money laundering. Of course, not only Panamanian banks are involved in this business. Most big U.S. banks have set up branches in Panama City. And drug trafficking and money laundering have increased sharply in Panama since Operation Just Cause. According to Panamanian human rights groups, several thousand people are killed in the U.S. invasion. 26 were U.S. soldiers, 50 were Panamanian soldiers, the rest were civilians, cut down by the overwhelming U.S. firepower pouring into crowded neighborhoods in poor sections of Panama City and Colon. Many of the dead were put in garbage bags and secretly buried in mass graves. This is not Saddam Hussein we are talking about. Iraq, 1991. Only 13 months after the invasion of Panama, the U.S. went to war again, this time on a much larger scale. The 1991 U.S.-Iraq war continued an epic battle for control over the immensely rich oil fields of the Persian Gulf. that began over 75 years later. During World War I, the British conquered the region that is now Iraq and Kuwait, seizing it from the declining Ottoman Empire. In 1920, hundreds of British soldiers and many more Iraqis died when the British Army suppressed a revolt against British rule. Britain ended up installing an unpicked king of Iraq. The new monarch promptly signed a deal with British and American oil companies, giving them the right to exploit all of Iraq's oil for 75 years in exchange for pittance in royalties. As the British Empire declined, the U.S. became the senior partner in an enduring Anglo-American alliance. The Middle East became a key part of their global sphere of influence. The Middle East possesses almost 2/3 of the world's known oil reserves. Control over the flow of oil by U.S. and British companies gave Washington strategic power over Europe, Japan, and the developing world. The U.S. State Department declared that Middle Eastern oil was, quote, a stupendous source of strategic power, one of the greatest prizes in world history, unquote. Washington came to think of the oil fields in the Middle East as its own private reserves. In 1958, U.S. and British oil companies were startled when the king of Iraq was overthrown. The new leader, a nationalist military officer named Abdel Karim Kazim, demanded changes in the sweetheart deals the monarchy had made with the oil companies. He also helped form OPEC, the cartel of oil producing countries. In 1963, the CIA collaborated with the Ba'ath Party to murder Kazim and overthrow his government. The Ba'ath Party was also nationalist, but at least it was anti-communist. It systematically killed its leftist opponents, and the CIA was happy to help. These Ba'ath guys, alright, yes, okay. Among the CIA collaborators in the 1963 coup was a young military officer named Saddam Hussein, who later emerged as the top leader in Iraq. But Hussein soon disappointed his accomplice in the U.S. by nationalizing the Iraq oil industry. Other Arab leaders followed suit, greatly alarming U.S. officials. And Henry Kissinger says, oil is much too important a commodity to be left in the hands of the Arabs. Then in 1980, Hussein did something that made him more popular in Washington. He decided to invade Iran. U.S. officials were delighted. After the 1979 Iranian Revolution, American strategists considered Iran the main threat to U.S. interests in the Middle East. The U.S. and its allies therefore were happy to provide Hussein with advanced weaponry. U.S. companies even sold Iraq materials to make chemical and biological weapons, including highly lethal strains of anthrax. Iraqi used chemical weapons against both Iranian troops and insurgent Kurdish villagers inside Iraq. The Reagan administration knew this, but the U.S. continued to supply Saddam Hussein, not only with the necessary chemicals, but also with satellite photos of the positions of Iranian troops. Over 100,000 Iranian soldiers were killed or injured by poison gas. In 1987, the Reagan administration intervened directly in the Iran-Iraq war on Iraq's side, sending a naval armada to the Persian Gulf to protect the oil tankers of a country that was their Iraq's ally, Kuwait. Using state-of-the-art weaponry, the U.S. Navy blew up an Iranian oil platform, destroyed several small speedboats, and recklessly shot down an Iranian passenger airliner, killing all 290 passengers. And then they said, we had to defend our ship. This is serious reading, you know. This is serious reading here. I am reading after what I read here. And, okay, they destroyed several small speed ships and recklessly shot down. Now, how much time we hear? We hear say, when name Gaddafi did not protect one man when it blew up a Panamanian airline. America, 1987, shot down an Iranian passenger. This is not a Al-Qaeda magazine may I read. This is an American book published in California by Americans, endorsed by Americans, a lot of Americans, including all veterans of the war. Okay, so they shoot down this airline, killing all 290 passengers. Okay, wow. Despite U.S. support, Saddam Hussein failed to seize any of Iran's oil fields. So he then turned his attention to the oil fields of his southern neighbors, which was Kuwait. So he decided to invade Kuwait. Hussein apparently expected that the U.S. would also tactically go along with his invasion of Kuwait. For the U.S., however, Kuwait was very different from Iran. The Kuwait Emir was a loyal friend of the U.S., and British oil companies and a close political ally of the United States. George H.W. Bush, which is the father of the other Bush, worried that the huge Iraqi army had become a threat to U.S. domination of the Middle East. And this is a quote from George Bush in 1990. Our jobs, our way of life, our own freedom, and the freedom of friendly countries around the world would all suffer if control of the world's great oil reserves fell into the hands of Saddam Hussein. Bush decided Hussein had to be punished for trespassing on an oil-rich U.S. protectorate. And now, the Pentagon launched the most intensive bombing campaign in history, using conventional bombs, cluster bombs, designed to rip bodies apart, napalm and phosphorus, which cling to unburned skins, and fuel air explosive, which have the impact of small nuclear bombs. Later, the U.S. used ammunition tipped with depleted uranium, which is now suspected as a cause of cancer among both Iraqis and U.S. soldiers and their children. Iraq was bombed back to a pre-industrial age, and tens of thousands were killed. The war had a message for the world. What we say go. This is a quote from George W. Bush, 1991. Baghdad and Basra were bombed relentlessly, killing thousands of civilians. Iraq had already begun to withdraw from Kuwait when Bush launched the ground war. The main aim of the ground offensive war was, in fact, not to drive the Iraqi troops out of Kuwait, but to keep them from leaving. The gate was closed, and tens of thousands of soldiers who were trying to go home were systematically slaughtered. Elsewhere, U.S. tanks and bulldozers intentionally buried thousands of soldiers alive in their trenches in a tactic designed mainly to destroy Iraqi's defense. Thousands of Iraqi soldiers was buried alive by U.S. tanks and bulldozers. George H. Bush, January 1991. In the life of a nation, there comes a moment when we are called upon to define who we are and what we believe. Tens of thousands of Iraqis died during the war, and the tragedy continued after the war ended. And this is not the war with the other day. This is the one where them say, where Saddam say the mother of all wars, where them say, this is Desert Storm. This is not the one we got the other day where Saddam did. Tens of thousands of Iraqis died during the war, and the tragedy continued after the war ended. Even more people died from waterborne diseases that spread because the U.S. systematically destroyed Iraqis' electrical sewage treatment and water treatment system. For over a decade, the U.S. insisted on maintaining the most severe economic sanctions regime in history, continuing to strangely this devastated Iraqi economy with dire consequences for the Iraqi people. In 1999, UNICEF estimated that infant and child mortality had more than doubled since the war. It attributed this sharp increase in mortality mainly to malnutrition and deteriorating health conditions caused by the war and ongoing sanctions. It estimated that 500,000 more children died as a result. That's 5,200 children a month. Bush's successor, Bill Clinton, not only kept up the sanctions, but also continued to bomb Iraq regularly for 8 years. And the U.S. war on Iraq was far from over. Kosovo, 1999. In the late 1990s, after enduring years of abuse at the hands of a Serbian-dominated Yugoslav government, Albanian rebels in Kosovo started a war for successions. The U.S. usually does not support minority groups demanding separation, but it all depends on whether the U.S. supports the government of the country facing disarmament. For instance, the U.S. supports Kurdish separatists in Iraq and Iran, but across the border in Turkey, a close ally, Washington, has provided tons of arms to crush the Kurds with U.S. help. Tens of thousands have been killed. And him say, our policy is to clear, we support people fighting for their freedom and oppose terrorist separatists. Okay. Because the Yugoslav strongman Slobodan Milosevic, was being less than cooperative with U.S. efforts, he extended his influence in Eastern Europe. Breaking up Yugoslavia was a cause the U.S. could warm up to. The Clinton administration embraced the Kosovo Liberation Army despite their drug dealing, ethnic extremism, and brutality. Following established practice, the administration issued an ultimatum the Yugoslavs could not possibly accept. And here's the deal. First, NATO takes over Kosovo. Second, NATO has free access to all of Yugoslavia. Third, you help pay for the NATO-run government. Sign here, or we bomb you. Okay. The NATO bombing turned an ugly but small-scale Yugoslav counterinsurgency operation into a massive ethnic cleansing drive. After the bombing began, Serbian soldiers and militia members began driving hundreds of thousands of Albanians out of the country and killed thousands of others. When the Albanians returned under NATO protection, Serbian and Gypsy residents were driven out and killed. Ultimately, the war served U.S. political objectives while causing tremendous death and suffering on all sides and greatly aggravating ethnic antagonism. This is the Cutting Edge on IRFM. We're there with you. Chapter 4. The War on Terrorism. After the horrific September 11 terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, one question was so sensitive it was seldom seriously addressed by the U.S. media. The question is, Mom, why did they do it? To find out, it makes sense to ask the prime suspect himself. As U.S. warplanes began bombing Afghanistan, Osama bin Laden released a videotape message. He praised the September 11th attacks and called for more attacks on the United States. Then he spelled out his motivations quite clearly, quoting Osama bin Laden, October 7, 2001. What America is tasting now is something insignificant compared to what we have tasted for scores of years. Our nation, the Islamic world, has been tasting the humiliation and degradation for more than 80 years. Its sons are killed, its blood is shed, its sanctuaries are attacked, and no one hears and no one heeds. Millions of innocent children are being killed as I speak. They are being killed in Iraq without committing any sins to America. I say only a few words to it and its people. I swear to God, who has elevated the skies without pillars, neither America nor the people who live in it will dream of security before we live. If here in Palestine and not before, all infidel armies leave the land of Muhammad. Peace be upon him. Quote from bin Laden. Few people anywhere in the world, including the Middle East, support bin Laden's terrorist methods. But most people in the Middle East share his anger at the United States. They are angry at the U.S. for supporting corrupt and dictatorial regimes in the region, for supporting Israel at the expense of the Palestinians, and for imposing U.S. dictates on the Middle East through military might and brutal economic sanctions. The Bush administration immediately instructed U.S. television networks to exercise caution in hearing bin Laden's tape messages. The official reason was the tapes may contain secret coding messages for terrorist operations. But were covert messages the administration's main concern? Perhaps it was more worried about the impact of bin Laden's overt message, that the September 11 attackers were carried out in retaliation for U.S. foreign policy and particular U.S. and military intervention in the Middle East. If Americans realize that U.S. military intervention abroad brought retaliation, causing death and destruction at home, we might think twice about whether the U.S. should be so eager to go to war overseas. The Pentagon has demonstrated time and time again that its advanced weaponry can devastate countries targeted for attack, leveling basic infrastructures and killing thousands, even hundreds of thousands of people. Over the last several decades, the true cost of the wars the U.S. has waged overseas have been largely hidden. We have had to pay the military bills, but few Americans have died. The death and destruction were all overseas. That changed on September 11. The violence reached the United States. The September 11 attacks, however, were not simple acts of retribution. They were also a provocation. Bin Laden expected the U.S. to respond with massive violence, knowing this would bring him new recruits. Ultimately, he hoped to win the majority of the Muslim world to support his holy war on the U.S. The Bush administration responded according to bin Laden's script. George W. Bush declared a war on terrorism using good versus evil rhetoric that mirrored bin Laden's. Bush and his advisors were ready, even eager for the war bin Laden wanted. They saw the September 11 attackers as a grand opportunity to boost military spending and demonstrate U.S. military power to the world. And this is a quote from George Bush, September the 12th, 2001. This will be a monumental struggle of good versus evil. This crusade, this war on terrorism is going to take a while. The self-righteous good versus evil rhetoric of the war on terrorism sharpens ironies that have long shadowed U.S. pronouncements against state-sponsored terrorism. President Bush, for instance, promised to scour the globe in search of states that harbor terrorists. He could have started in the state of Florida. For over 40 years, Miami has served as the base of operations for well-financed groups of Cuban exiles that have carried out violent terrorist attacks on Cuba. Most recently, they bombed a number of Havana tourist spots in 1997, killing an Italian tourist, and they tried to assassinate Fidel Castro in Panama in 2000. It would not be difficult for the U.S. government to find evidence involving these terrorist organizations because the CIA and the Pentagon trained many of their members. Take, for instance, Luis Pasado Carriles and Orlando Bosch, suspected masterminds of the bombing of the Cuban passenger airline that claimed the lives of 73 people. Before Pasada could be tried for the airline bombing, he escaped from a prison in Venezuela and found a job supplying arms to the CIA-backed Nicaraguan Contras. Posada's accomplice, Orlando Bosch, has long been protected from extradition by the U.S. government. Although Bosch was convicted of carrying out a bazooka attack on a ship in Miami Harbor, President H.W. Bush, at the urging of his son, Jeb, prevented his expulsion from the country. Bush signed an executive pardon providing Bosch with safe haven in Florida. And then he promised to rejoin the struggle. If George Bush had been serious about going after all states that harbor terrorists, he would have issued an ultimatum to his brother, the governor of Florida. Posada, Bush, and his friends are only a few of the violent characters whose activities have been sponsored by the CIA. Many of the CIA's covert operations, bombings, assassinations, sabotage, and paramilitary massacres are terrorism by any definition. Many of the shadowy figures involved in these activities are still working with the CIA around the world. But others, including Osama bin Laden, have turned on their former American partners. Afghanistan, 2001. Bush's war on terrorism began with U.S. warplanes bombing Afghanistan, the unfortunate country where bin Laden chose to locate his headquarters. At that time, Afghanistan was ruled by fundamentalist Muslim clerics of the Taliban movement, whom both bin Laden and the CIA had supported during the anti-Soviet war. Now Washington decided to destroy its former allies. The people of Afghanistan suffer the consequences. U.S. bombs killed hundreds and perhaps thousands of civilians, and the war cut off relief supplies to millions already facing starvation. The total number of deaths will never be known, but it's certain that many more civilians died in the U.S. assault on Afghanistan than in the attack on the World Trade Center. The U.S. made common cause with a new set of Afghan allies, brutal regional warlords under U.S. auspices. Islamic fundamentalism has been replaced by brazen corruption as warlords fight for power and prey on the people under their jurisdiction. The opium trade, which the zealous Taliban clerics had briefly suppressed, once again flourishes and under the warlords. And Afghanistan regains its place as the world's top opium producer. Iraq, 2003. This is the Cutting Edge on IRFM. This is the Cutting Edge on IRFM. We're reading from a book named Addicted to War, Why the U.S. Can't Kick Militarism. And this is, we reach Afghanistan 2001. Yes. Bush's war on terrorism began with U.S. news warplanes bombing Afghanistan. We read this already. Iraq will reach. Iraq will reach. Iraq. Okay. Yeah, we reach Iraq. Iraq, 2003. From the day they took office, Bush and his key lieutenants set their sights on Iraq. After 9/11, they packaged an invasion as part of the war on terrorism to win UN backing. They claimed Saddam Hussein was developing nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons. The threat was so imminent, they said that an imminent invasion was imperative. And Bush said in 2002, we can't wait for the final proof. The smoking gun that could come in form of a mushroom cloud. We now know that Iraq had no weapons of mass destruction and that the Bush administration manipulated evidence to justify its war plans. Even then, it was clear that the specter of such weapons was just a pretext. The U.S. made no secret of its underlying war aims to install a pro-U.S. regime in Iraq and to increase U.S. military and political power in the Middle East. Bush therefore had little use for UN weapons inspection in Iraq. The UN refused to endorse the invasion, but the US and Britain went ahead anyway. The Iraq army was decimated and thousands of civilians who were unlucky enough to get into the way were also killed. As soon as US troops captured Baghdad, elated American officials began issuing threats to Iraq's neighbors, Syria and Iran. The message was, go along with the American program or else. The Bush administration had big plans based on Iraq's tremendous oil wealth and U.S. military might. American officials hoped to create a client regime in Iraq and use it as a base of U.S. power in the heart of the Arab Middle East. They brought in a group of emirate politicians intended to install them as leaders of the new government. Their favorite was Ahmed Chalabi, a wealthy businessman who was convicted of bank fraud in Jordan. Chalabi won the hearts of White House officials in part by declaring that he favored pulling Iraq out of OPEC and then privatizing Iraq oil and selling it off to foreign companies. But Bush and his friends overlooked one detail, that the people of Iraq might not go along with their plans. Bush declared that he had liberated the people of Iraq and that he would bring them democracy. The Iraqis quite naturally were suspicious. If the past is any indication that prospects for democracy in Iraq under U.S. tutelage are not good, the U.S. has overthrown many governments around the world, but the result was rarely been any kind of democracy. Instead, the result has always been brutal dictatorship. It soon became clear that American liberation of Iraq came with strings attached. But Bush appointed Paul Bremer, a counter-terrorism expert trained by Henry Kissinger, to head up the U.S. occupation of Iraq. U.S. oil companies, executives, and bankers were assigned to look after the Iraqi oil and industry and central bank. U.S. military officers were placed in charge of Iraqi cities. Bush promised to give sovereignty back to Iraqis, but he also made it clear that only a pro-American government would be acceptable. Because the U.S. is extremely unpopular among Arabs throughout the Middle East, if Iraqis actually were allowed to vote freely, they could hardly be expected to elect pro-U.S. candidates. That's why the U.S. adamantly resisted holding popular elections in occupied Iraq, instead proposing that members of a new governing assembly be selected by unpicked caucuses. And this is a quote from Paul Bremer. In a post-war situation like this, if you start holding elections, the people who are rejectionists tend to win. By rejectionists, Bremer meant those who oppose U.S. occupation. The U.S. occupation authority in Iraq was hardly model of democratic government. Newspaper and radio and television stations that criticized the authority were shut down. Tens of thousands of Iraqis disappeared into prisons run by the U.S. military. Prisoners were held without charge and were subjected to humiliation, sexual abuse, and torture. U.S. Attorney General John Ashcroft, after he sent a team to rebuild Iraqi's system of courts and prisoners in torture, said, now all Iraqis can taste liberty in their native land. Facing a hostile population, the U.S. military policed Iraqi cities and villages with heavy hand. Scores of Iraqis were killed as they protested against the occupation. Journalists were gunned down as they covered U.S. military operation. Others who were simply in their wrong place at the wrong time were shot at military checkpoints or when soldiers raided their neighbors. The U.S. occupation of Iraq followed the familiar path of previous colonial adventures. Iraqis organized armed resistance and the U.S. military took increasingly harsh punitive measures against the population, inspiring fear and indignation. As U.S. soldiers and Iraqis died in daily battles, Bush's response was swaggering cowboy rhetoric. Quote, there are some who feel like they can attack us. There, my answer is bring them on. As resistance grew, American commanders became increasingly frustrated and aggressive. After 4 U.S. military contractors were brutally killed in Fallujah, the U.S. took revenge. Hundreds of residents were killed as densely packed neighborhoods were shelled by tanks and bombed and strafed by warplanes and helicopters. The siege of Fallujah only incited wider opposition throughout Iraq to U.S. occupation. By spring 2004, it was clear that Bush's grandiose plan had collapsed. The vast majority of Iraqis wanted the U.S. out, and they wanted nothing to do with any political association with Washington. Resistance drove up the cost of occupation, keeping over 135,000 troops in Iraqi costs over $1 billion a week. Every day U.S. this is not in the book. I wonder if a man knows 9/11 changed everything in the world. And not only that, I wonder if a man knows the reason why America in the position right now in terms of finance is not because of Obama not being able to function effectively, but because of America's lust for wars and the money that them spend on wars. Now, if you have spent $1 billion a week to keep 135,000 people in an occupied state, then that must cripple the economy at your house. Yes. Every day U.S. soldiers return home in coffins, are disabled for life. But politicians and generals in Washington continue to insist that they would never back down, no matter what the cost. The U.S. occupation of Afghanistan and Iraq, together with continued U.S. support for the Israeli occupation of Palestine, have added fuel to simmering anti-American sentiments across the Middle East. By invading and occupying Muslim countries, the U.S. is only inviting more attacks on U.S. soldiers and other American targets. The Pentagon has promised to respond with more violence. The spiral of bloodshed is escalating dangerously. America's long-time addiction to war has reached a new level, creating greater dangers for people in this country and around the world. Unfortunately, there are some people who profit handsomely from this addiction. Chapter 5, The War Profiteers. In the front line of the pro-war crowd, you will find an assortment of politicians, generals, and corporate executives. If you ask them why they are so eager to go to war, they'll give you noble and selfless reasons. They will tell you democracy. Some will say freedom, some will say justice, some will say peace. But what really motivates them to go to war are somewhat less lofty aims. Contracts, markets, natural resources, and power. For most people, the huge Pentagon budget means less money in their pockets. But some people, just the opposite, it's true. Over 100,000 companies fed at the Pentagon trial but the big money goes to a handful of huge corporations. United Technology, Textron, General Dynamics, Northern Grumman, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, the list goes on, General Electric. As they watch missiles flying and the bombs dropping in the Middle East, top executives at the big weapons manufacturers are adding up their profits. Their brains working like cash registers gone haywire. For weapons makers, war means more orders, not only from the Pentagon but also from overseas. After the first Gulf War demonstrated that their weapons can truly kill on a massive scale, foreign sales of U.S. weapons manufacturers skyrocketed. Let's take a look at some of the men in Washington who are most gung-ho about war. First one, Dick Cheney. And then they talk about Dick Cheney with him, Halliburton. You know, Dick Cheney was part of Halliburton. They have Richard Pearl. Yes. And then the list goes on again. No, in fact, under the banner of funding, the war on terrorism has abandoned efforts to avoid budget deficits. Instead, every year it gives the Pentagon what amounts to a blank check. After the end of the Cold War, many in Washington were reconsidering the humongous size of the military budget, which had converted the U.S. from the world's biggest lender into the world's biggest debtor. In an effort to balance the federal budget, politicians were beginning to trim the Pentagon's toenails. After September 11th, all this changed. Bush and the Congress started to pump up the Pentagon's bloated budget without restraint. Even congressional opposition to the far-fetched missile defense program collapsed. Missile defense, like the war on terrorism, promised to protect Americans from danger while actually creating a much more dangerous world. If other countries think there are any chance the U.S. could block their missiles, they will feel vulnerable to U.S. attack. China has already promised to build more and better missiles which could overwhelm the U.S. missile shield. This is for a nuclear arms race in Asia. If China builds more nuclear missiles, then India will. If India does, then Pakistan will. If Pakistan, the list goes on. In 1972, the U.S. and the USSR signed the ABM Treaty to try to avoid this kind of arms race in order to pursue missiles of defense. The U.S. unilaterally scrapped the treaty, but they didn't bother missile defense proponents. In this spirit, Congress rejected the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, which has been signed by 164 countries, and it continues to finance nuclear weapons research and production. In fact, the Pentagon is eager to develop a new arsenal of small battlefield nuclear weapons. The U.S. is keeping enough nuclear weapons to wipe out most of humanity. As potential nuclear targets in Russia have declined, the Pentagon has been retargeting its missiles at every reasonable adversary. In the post-Cold War world order, the U.S. does not seem to want to be bound by any arms treaties. It refuses to sign a new protocol to the 1972 Biological Weapons Treaty because it would require international inspections of its biological weapons research facilities, where it is creating deadly new strains, including highly lethal powered anthrax. U.S. officials say they are only creating germ weapons in order to study how to defend against them. But can other countries trust a government that bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki and actually develop plans to use smallpox and other biological weapons against Vietnam and Cuba? As a matter of fact, they use it against the Native Americans too in the blankets. Go and read your history. They put smallpox in the blankets and gave the Native Americans, and they had a experiment called this is not in the book here. The other experiment called the Tuskegee experiment, where they injected syphilis in 300 black people, black men, to see what would happen. 300 black men. As a matter of fact, in the 90s, when Clinton was president, he actually apologized for the Tuskegee experiment. And it's a woman catch them. It's a woman find it out. 300 black men was injected with syphilis. Call it Tuskegee experiment. Go look it up. Back to the book. And U.S. weaponized germs not only represent a threat to people in other countries. What if some of the Pentagon's powdered anthrax got into the hands of some fanatic here in the United States? During the Cold War, the Soviet Union was a serious military competitor for the United States. Today, the U.S. maintains a huge war machine despite the lack of any serious competition. The U.S. military budget is now larger than the next 25 biggest spenders put together. It makes up a full 36% of total global military spending. You hear that? The U.S. military budget is now larger than the next 25 biggest spenders put together. It makes up a full 36% of total global military spending. In other words, the United States spend $399 million annual military expenditures. Russia spends $65 million, China spends $47 million, and Japan spend 43 billion. Sorry, it's billion. Me I talk about, you know, I say million. The United States spend $399 billion annually for military expenditure. Russia spends $65 billion, China spend $47 billion, and Japan spend $43 billion. Them is the World Cups, Chapter 6, the high price of militarism. Maintaining this huge military machine is not cheap. Every year, the U.S. spends hundreds of billions of dollars on the military. That is millions, billions. You can't even count the zero them. Since 1948, the U.S. has spent, listen to this. Listen to this. Talking about militarism, listen to this. Since 1948, the U.S. has spent more than 15 trillion. No, we're not. We passed billion. No, we passed billion. We got a trillion. Since 1948, the U.S. has spent more than $15 trillion to build up the military might. Just how much is 15 trillion worth? So they must add up now. It adds up to more than the cumulative monetary value of all human-made wealth in the United States. This is what it adds up to. It adds up to more than the cumulative monetary value of all human-made wealth in the U.S. In other words, the United States government has spent more on the military over the last 4 decades than the value. Listen to this. You talk about warmongering. Listen to this. As I said, this book was not written by Al Qaeda. This book was not written by any foreigner. It's American write this book. In other words, the government has spent, that is the United States government, has spent more on the military over the last 40 years than the value of all the factories, machinery, roads, bridges, water and sewage system, airports, railroads, power plants, office buildings, shopping centers, schools, hospitals, hotels, houses in this country put together. Let me read that again. The United States government has spent more on the military over the last 4 decades than the value of all the factories, machinery, road, bridges, water and sewage systems, airports, railroads, power plants, office buildings, shopping centers, schools, hospitals, hotels, houses in this country put together. If we add up the current Pentagon budget, the nuclear weapons budget of the Energy Department, the military portion of the NASA budget, foreign military aid, veterans benefits, interest payments, and debt incurred by past military spending and military-related expenses, the U.S. spends over $776 billion a year to feed its addiction to war. That's more than $1 million a minute. That's more than $1 million a minute. This is to satisfy the addiction to war. This is the spending. And then them wonder why them can't. That's why them owe China $1 trillion. Oh, America owe China. That's weird. This costs you plenty. An average American household contributes over $4,400 in taxes every year to the cause of building up the world's most powerful military. Because Congress is so generous to the Pentagon, social programs get shortchanged. Bridges, roads, sewers, and water systems are crumbling because the government fails to provide money needed to maintain them. Bus fares are rising, and service is being slashed as the federal government has eliminated financial support for mass transit operating costs. Schools are run down and overcrowded in some inner city. They sound like a third world country they might talk about, man. High schools, 80% of the students drop out. This sound like a third world country they might talk about, man. 80% of the students are drop out. More than a fifth of all adults can't read a job application or a street sign. This was, that thing I did that what do you call it? USA Today newspaper. More than a fifth of all adults in America can't read a job application or a street sign, yet federal education funding per student has declined substantially over the last 2 decades. Skyrocketing prices are causing a crisis in healthcare. 43 million people have no insurance and millions more have inadequate insurance. More and more people don't get the medical care they need because they can't afford it. Yet public hospitals are being closed and the government has failed to enact any serious health care reform. 1/5 of all listen to this, if this is not third world, what else? 1/5 of all expectant mothers do not receive prenatal care. This is one reason the U.S. has the highest infant mortality rate in the developed world. Twice as high as Japan. Every 50 minutes a child in the U.S. dies as a result of poverty or hunger. This is not Africa we are talking about. This is America. Every 50 minutes a child in the U.S. dies as a result of poverty or hunger. And I was reading the statistics the one time where them say there are 20 million homeless people on the streets. Yet Congress has been exceedingly stingy in finding maternal and child aid programs. With rents rising and wages falling, millions of families are living on the verge of eviction. Millions of people end up living on the streets. Yet when it comes to funding for housing and homeless, most of Washington seems to have adopted Reagan's attitudes. Drug addiction and alcoholism are crippling millions of people and devastating families and whole communities. Yet there are not enough public treatment centers to handle even a fraction of these seeking help. And many centers are closing their doors for lack of funding. And somehow they come up with billions of dollars a year to operate 12 aircraft carrier battleships. This is serious. With the $1 billion it takes to maintain just one of these aircraft carriers, and this is about the aircraft carrier now, because them say it's paid billions of dollars a year to operate 12 aircraft carrier battle groups. With the 1 billion it takes to maintain just one of these carriers for a year, you could build 17,000 homes for 67,000 people. Or you could provide free prenatal care for 1,600,000 expectant mothers, saving thousands of babies. Or enroll children and 84,000 more kids in the Head Start free school program. Or provide intensive drug and alcohol treatment for 333,000 people with just this, what them use to make to maintain the aircraft. Or give 500,000 malnourished children in this country 3 meals a day for 1 year. Or you could put down a payment on a brand new aircraft carrier. Which is exactly what they are doing, building a new aircraft carrier. The government can find hundreds of billions for new aircraft carriers and other military hardware. But they say they can't find money to deal with the pressing problems we face. The price of militarism includes more than high taxes and poor social services. Building nuclear weapons, for instance, has probably been the biggest environmental disaster this country has ever seen. More than 100 nuclear weapon plants owned by the Energy Department have been spewing radioactive waste into the air, dumping it in rivers and leaking it into the soil and groundwater for decades. The administrators who run the nuclear weapon plants have knowingly subjected the people who work in them and the people who live near them to deadly radioactive contamination without telling them a word about it. The government now estimates it will take 25,000 workers at least 30 years to clean up the mess at their plants at a cost of 300 million or more. What's more, nuclear weapon tests have spread deadly plutonium across large tracts of the Southwest and the South Pacific. Many of the 458,000 U.S. soldiers who participated in the atomic test program are now dying of cancer. But they are not the only ones. High cancer rates plague the general population in the testing eras. One study estimated that previous nuclear testing could eventually cause at least 430,000 people to die of cancer worldwide. Meanwhile, at military bases around the country, they have been dumping hundreds of thousands of tons of toxic waste, including chemical warfare agents, napalm, explosive PCBs, and heavy metals, creating malignant lagoons and contaminating the groundwater of surrounding communities. There are 11,000 military dump sites that need to be cleaned up. The estimated cost is 100 to 200 billion. Another cause of the foreign wars is the retaliation they bring. On the eve of the U.S. invasion of Iraq, Homeland Secretary Tom Ridge admitted that the war could spur more terrorist attacks against the U.S. In other words, the Bush administration knew that invading Iraq would bring retaliation, but it decided to go ahead and place us in greater danger anyway. The war on terrorism opened a new chapter in U.S. foreign wars, a chapter that may be marked by an endless cycle of violence. Some in Washington seem to relish the prospect. Emerging from its secret bunker several weeks after the September 11, 2001 attacks, Dick Cheney predicted that the war on terrorism would go on for a long time. As part of this endless war, he declared we have to be prepared for ongoing terrorist attacks. As a result, Cheney warned we'll have to get used to evasive security measures, which brings us to another cause of militarism, the loss of our civil rights. So, Homeland Security, them talk about. This is a serious thing. So, militarism and the media, last chapter, and how them use the media. Most Americans are not very eager to fight wars halfway around the world. In order to win public support, pro-war politicians have always had to wrap foreign wars up in red, white, and blue and tell Americans that their patriotic duty to support them. And we can remember Muhammad Ali, one of the most famous person who decided that him now go fight people who him don't know. And then it goes on, chapter 8, resisting militarism. So, we're not going to read no more, no. We're not going to read no more. It's almost done. I recommend that you go and get this book. I don't know where I'll get it, Go up online. It's easy. Do something about it. And then in the last part of the book, it tell you what you can do about it. What can we do about it? It offers some solutions. Addicted to war. Why the U.S. can't kick militarism. A very interesting but serious compilation of reasons given why America is continuously at war with people, and we still can't see no end to their proclamation that you have to fight wars to bring peace. But I tell you, the information is devastating, man. And
I can't see why you need security thicker than Obama now.
No, well, you know, I don't know about the security, but it's a book. It's a main.
It's a book, and you know, it's a reveal things that never really want to know about.
Yeah.
I can't say from reading them, so they might try to suppress a lot of things to the media.
Yeah.
And propaganda have spread in order for people accept what them doing.
What them are doing, yes.
Right.
I mean, the other, you say it always come like said them is the Jesus and the other people them is the devil.
Right. You don't have much credit, but I don't like to know when you complete the part of what we can do, even as individuals, you know?
Yeah, what we can do.
Yeah, give thanks for that.
All right. Yeah, okay. Right. Give thanks, man.
In my way.
Yeah, well, as the version asks about what we can do, in the back of the book, it gives you a list, too numerous to mention here. It's really like enough list of organization and groups that is really doing something, you know. I mean, American Friends Service Committee, Democracy Now!, with Amy Goodman, GI Rights Hotline, Central Committee of Consensus Objections, Global Peace Campaign, Global Exchange, Peace Action, Center on Conscience and War. It's enough organizations inside us so where they come together to do these things. Yes, Cutting Edge.
Yes, Muta.
Blessed man.
Blessed Alan Mutabaruka.
Yes, sir.
I come from a language strong. It's a little reading when you read it, Muta.
Yeah.
You want to check out a documentary named The Ring of Power. And then you synchronize everything.
With that.
When them go if you read the Muta, you don't see a lot of things long time. But so when you get something from out of the belly of them,
and read it.
Yeah, man. Then them can't say it come from the external.
No, them must say it.
Them must say it.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, Muta, The Ring of Power at the fullness, my brother.
The Ring of Power name?
Yeah, man.
It's a DVD.
If you can't get on DVD, but you can go on the net and find it.
No, it's a book or a DVD.
It's a DVD.
Well, I'll get it tomorrow, definitely.
Yeah, I tell you. Yeah. When you stay on the net and watch that, a 30 episode it have, you know.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, I.
Ring of Power.
The Ring of Power.
I Bridget, tell about one the other day, they were rough, you know. All right, there was...
Mr. Muta, when am I going with me don't see that long time, my brother?
Yeah, all right, the Ring of Power.
There's no negativity.
All right, I'm going to watch it. I'm going to watch it, definitely.
Will you line it up and watch it, man?
Yeah, man, definitely.
I mean, I listen for the eye comment on it, you know.
All right, Bridget. Cutting Edge.
Yes, Muta, all one.
Blessed man.
What do you think about Obama not clearing Garvey's name?
What I think about Obama not what?
Clearing Garvey's name of mail fraud.
Well, Obama now do nothing more than... Look, I tell you, since Obama there, more people lose them passport, visa, more people get deported, they have this immigration law now where it might institute. More drone kill more Afghanistan civilians than in a bush.
But Muta, if Obama don't do it, who going to do it? Which U.S. president is going to clear Garvey's name if Obama don't do it?
Well, we have to clear it first. We need to clear it, you know. Because him still a criminal on here, so, you know, we need to clear him name on here.
Well, I am very disappointed in Obama still.
Well, a long time we disappointed in him still. A long time we disappointed. Me never did feel say because a black man did it, it go better for we as black people. Because him not have that Pan-Africanist, nationalistic, black nationalism in him consciousness at all. No time at all. If you know they say, him go around the other day in some campaigning, and him not going on none of the black area, them, you know. You never see that? Hello? The Virgin gone. Him have a bus move the other day in America there, when going a couple states, and the black people them must say, wait, then you're not coming on you're not coming out of the few area. That's serious thing. Yes, that's serious. We love it. Yeah, cutting edge.
Hey, brother Muta.
Blessed man.
This is Ross Marty from Washington, D.C.
Washington. Why you say earthquake shake up there? You feel the earthquake?
Yes, sir.
Go straight up to Montreal. From down at the bottom, go straight up to Montreal. One earthquake.
Ain't no one bad thing about that. Category 3 hurricane that come through Sunday.
Yeah, that we hear too. But the hurricane, the earthquake, which is like 5 point something. Them said shake go clear up to Montreal.
Shake from Virginia up to Maine, down to Ohio, all over the place.
Why is that? And them said that not happening in the past, how much years? 50 odd years, 100 years?
I think it's hard they fooling around with.
Yeah. So what we are saying?
But you see, one thing I need to tell you, you have to check out the one ring of power that the brother just talk about.
No, man, I mean, them not write it down, man. The ring of power, I'm going to read, I'm going to look on it, man, definitely.
Yo, when you see that, you have to sit down and don't move and watch it. You can't move.
Well, I want to tell you, say, the brethren who give me this book, yeah, I know the plane, so I read out the whole life before me reach my destination, you know. Before me reach the destination, I read out the whole book. I said, no, I have to share this book with my listener them. So, yeah, man, I'm going to look on the documentary.
You see that ring of power connect certain things where certain movie and all of them things didn't even touch. It connect all kind of things.
Yeah, man.
So, I'm a youth, 34 years old, and, you know, it take me back in my history to things I never even know about. Up to this point today, where we there right now.
Yeah, well, it's good to know this history, you know, that you can be more equipped, you know.
Yes, sir.
Give thanks, brethren.
Yes, sir. Bless up.
Isis. Let's cut an edge.
With Dr. Mutabaruka.
Blessed man.
Yeah, man, a prophecy will fulfill itself now, bro. Yeah, man. Remember, Obama deny him mentor, you know, to get the president, you know. Yeah, man. Remember, Obama deny him mentor, you know, to get the president, you know.
Who are mentor?
They were the brethren, the pastor brethren name again.
Oh, yeah, the man when he go to church.
Yes, not real. So, in the 9/11 thing, so the man go almost falling, man. And I begin night. The almighty thing the almighty thing, the procreation have to happen. Marcus, the whole thing. This little country in Jamaica, yes, boss man. It's so important to history of this world, but we still not understand. Go on, do you think, doctor? Cause we are anointed Dr. Mutabaruka, because you will not do it for you now.
Alright, sir.
Yes, and Bob and burning spirit too.
Yeah, alright.
And the great Peter Touch prophecy.
All of them are doctor. All of them
mean?
Doctor. Alright, sir.
Alright, we will on our doctor. I know people get doctor, they are doctor of African liberation, African studies, and world philosophy.
Alright.
One love here, sir.
Blessed man. Let's cut an edge.
With Dr. Mutabaruka.
Blessed man.
Yeah, man, a prophecy will fulfill itself now, bro. Yeah, man. Remember, Obama deny him mentor, you know, to get the president, you know. Yeah, man. Remember, Obama deny him mentor, you know, to get the president, you know.
Who are mentor?
They were the brethren, the pastor brethren name again.
Oh, yeah, the man when he go to church.
Yes, not real. So, in the 9/11 thing, so the man go almost falling, man. And I begin night. The almighty thing the almighty thing, the procreation have to happen. Marcus, the whole thing. This little country in Jamaica, yes, boss man, it's so important to history of this world, but we still not understand. Go and do your thing, doctor, because we are anointed Dr. Mutabaruka, because you will not do it for you now.
Alright, sir.
Yes, and Bob and Burning Spirit too.
Yeah, alright.
And the great Peter Touch, prophecy.
All of them are doctor. All of them are doctor. Alright, sir.
Alright, we hold on a doctor. Enough people get doctor, yeah, doctor of African liberation, African studies, and world philosophy.
Alright.
One love here, sir.
Blessed man.
Bring such fruitfulness, melancholy, the losers who had their fair chance at securing what was, what is a joy compelling, erasing, never to fear. Yes, my love, my proven, my dear.
Yes, Cotton Edge.
Yes, Father Muta.
Blessed man.
Blessed love man. Rastafari Conference 2010. I want you to draw your memory. You ready? Father Muta.
Now listen, man.
Yes. Harp. Some other CDs. I ask you if you address them for me.
Yeah.
The man that gave you the book, the man that waged war in America a couple of years earlier, Osama bin Laden. Well, we don't hear from you, you know.
You don't hear from me?
Yes, sir. But anyway, we'll skip that. I just want to take the time to digress and say, long live Osama bin Laden.
Wait, hold on. When you say you don't hear from me, what you mean? You don't hear from me at
no, I left a number and asked you to call.
Hear from.
I'm sorry?
You talk about a personal hear from, or you don't hear the issues them address? You don't hear.
Maybe I'm having a bad, yeah. No, I said I gave you 3 CDs.
Yeah, I know, but when you not hear from me in terms of the issues addressed, are you personally not get a hear from?
No, I asked you to address some work that I did, some poetical works.
Okay.
But anyway, that's not of consequence. My aim and intent for this call is to say to you that the oppressors will keep attacking 500 years from Hawkins till now, and we must understand that our journey has just begun. A journey that requires us to relentlessly defend in an assiduous way the whole factor of our survival as a people. And don't see Gaddafi as some madman or striving to control oil or whatever. It is an orchestrated plan for us to hate Gaddafi. And the rebels, as we know, is not just the rebels, is the West trying to take over resources of Africa and the rest of it. So, I want to take the time and say to the eye that we must see Osama bin Laden, the fight, although they are Arabs, so-called, we must see them as the enemy of your enemy is my friend. So, although the Arabs came into Africa and did what they did, they are not truly friends of African people, but they are part of the subjugated group by the West. So, I just don't more have to leave by you.
Blessed,
yes, sir?
man. All right, give thanks, man.
Highly full. Blessed. We'll talk.
Yeah.
Blessed.
Yeah, so earlier on, we play a clip from a past Ku Klux Klan and do an interview. Some people say, boy, Muta, you know, easy, you know, where you get them things from Rasta? All right. We play an interview, for those of you who's early latecomers, we play an interview with with a Ku Klux Klan. I talk about meeting this black brother and how the black brother overcome him with certain thinking and certain ways. So, we want to play it again in the closing part of the Culture Nature. Listen to this. Listen to this.
In 79, I think you would have been about 22, you went to a radio debate to the Reverend Wade Watts, who was the state leader of the National Association for the Advancement of Coloured People, who'd worked with Martin Luther King.
Yes.
And when you got to this debate, he held out his hand for you to shake.
Yes, he did.
Did you hesitate?
He caught me off guard. See, I'm expecting this black militant to come in with a great big afro this big and an African dashiki on with bones hanging around it and a button on that says, I hate honkies and death to crackers, you know, all that stuff. And I figured he'd have on a
You seriously thought
Yeah, that's what I thought. And I thought he'd come in there carrying a boombox blaring out the theme from Shaft. I figured he'd flash the switchblade at me and go, black is beautiful, honky. I'm going to kill all you white devils, you know. That's what I thought I was going to see. So when the door opened up and in came Reverend Wade Watts, and he's wearing a suit and a tie, and he's carrying a Bible, and he walks up and he puts his hand out to me. He goes, hello there, Mr. Clare. I'm Reverend Wade Watts. I just want to tell you I love you and Jesus loves you. And I mean, I'm shocked, you know. And then he puts his hand out, and I'm shaking his hand without thinking, because this wasn't what I was expecting. Then I realized I just broke a Klan rule, and I jerked my hand back, you know. And I started looking at my hand, which he saw that, and that was met as an insult. The Klan rule book says the physical touch of a non-white is pollution. And I thought, I just shook hands with a black person, and he sees me looking at my hand. He goes, don't worry, Johnny, it don't come off. And you know, I start calling him names. I go, you no good, sorry, bleep, 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 you mother this, you, you that. And he looked at me and he goes, God bless you, Johnny. He says, you can't do enough to me to make me hate you. I'm going to love you, and I'm going to pray for you whether you like it or not. And I didn't know how to deal with that. I had never had that happen to me before.
A few years later, you burnt down his church, didn't you?
Set fire to his church. See, what happened was we started off going by his house, calling him names. We got no response. Threw trash all over his lawn. Got no response. We showed up with our sheets and hoods and stood out there in his yard. Said, get on out here, boy. We got something for you. And he comes outside and he goes, boys, Halloween's 4 more months away. I got no trick-or-treat in here for you. Come back in October. And he goes back in the house.
That's a brave man.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't know how to deal with this. And so the Klan goes, you got any more bright ideas? I said, I don't know. I said, I'll tell you what we'll do. So we burned a cross across the street from his house. He came outside and asked us if we needed hot dogs and marshmallows for a barbecue, you know. So finally, I said, I'm tired of messing with him, and we set fire to his church. And they put the fire out before the church was destroyed. And I remember I called him up, disguised my voice, and I said, hey, boy, you better be afraid. We're coming to get you, boy. You don't know who we are, but we know who you are. And he goes, hello, Johnny. He goes, a man like you takes the time to call me. I'm so honored. And all that stuff. He goes, let me do something to you. He goes, dear Lord, please forgive Johnny for being so stupid. He doesn't mean to be so ornery. He's a good boy trying to get out somewhere there. And I hung up the phone on him. I said, how dare him? And so the funniest thing that happened with him, though, is I didn't know what to do. And I was at my ropes in. And one day we was watching him, and he went into a restaurant. So we got a bunch of us together, and about 30 of us went in there and surrounded him. And he had this chicken there on the table at the restaurant. And I walked up and I said, hey, boy, this restaurant's for white people only. We don't want you here. I said, so I'm going to make you a promise. I said, I promise you we're going to do the same thing to you that you do to that chicken. So you think real hard before you touch that chicken. So he looked at me and looked at the Klan. Then he picked up the chicken and he kissed it. And when he kissed the chicken, the whole restaurant acted just like y'all did. They all start laughing, you know, and everything. And I looked up, and even the Klan was laughing. You got to admit, that was funny. I said, every one of you outside. I'm outside, and they're doubled over laughing. I'm going, you guys are going to get suspended and lose your robe for 2 weeks. I said, I'm getting tired of this. And I'm hollering at them and yelling. They're laughing. I heard a horn honking, and Reverend Watts is driving off going, bye, Johnny, you know, and stuff. And that's how he chose. That's how one old black, we never bothered him again. And that's how one old black man defeated the entire Ku Klux Klan, because he used this. Michael Scott.